Chapter 500. After completely refining the God-sealing pagoda, Qin Yu finally understood the true might of the God-sealing pagoda. The God-sealing pagoda sucked its target into it. One was a soul attack and the other was a material absorption. Generally, if one's soul was too weak, one would end up in a miserable state when facing the God-sealing pagoda. In the divine realm, one's strength is directly proportional to one's soul's realm. Those heavenly deity experts, which one among them doesn't have a soul at the nascent soul level? Soul attack. That's far from enough. Qin Yu understood in his heart that this so-called soul attack was merely to cause the target to be in a muddle-headed state and then take the opportunity to absorb them. Even if I completely refine it, my soul's realm is still too weak. If I were to only rely on the God-sealing pagoda, I reckon that I would only be able to handle high-level deities. Qin Yu estimated in his heart. Soul attack was also a divine awareness attack. With the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, Qin Yu's divine awareness had already reached the threshold of low-level heavenly deity. He was completely capable of subduing high-level deities. Big Brother. Ho Fei and Kuroa's voices sounded from outside. Uncle Fu's voice also sounded. Master, I've already brought Ho Fei and Kuro here. I've also prepared the 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones required to pay for the 3 portions. Only then did Qin Yu walk out from the house. Fei Xiaohei, how's the refinement of your grand mist spiritual treasures? Qin Yu asked with a smile. The current Ho Fei and Kuro were much more confident than before. Ho Fei laughed mischievously and said, although I've only refined 30% of the divine boat flying yamen, its speed is already extremely fast. In the Jianglan's realm, if I didn't use teleportation and greater teleportation, I would have been able to shake off mixed hairbird in the blink of an eye. Kuro lightly smiled and said, I've also refined about 30% of the snow thread gloves. However, my strength has increased by 10 times. Now, when facing me, monkey can only flee. That powerful? Qin Yu was slightly surprised. He had only refined 30% of it, but his strength had already increased by so much. However, after giving it some thought, Qin Yu understood. The reason why Kuroa's strength had increased tenfold was because Kuroa's strength was too weak. Thus, the increase in strength appeared to be much greater. Mixed hairbird is really powerful. That snow thread glove is too abnormal. Not only does it increase his attack power by several times, it can also transform into transparent threads to attack the opponent. Ho Fei was also somewhat helpless. Kuro said confidently, not only can it shoot snow threads to attack, but it can also form an inescapable net. The snow thread gloves were indeed powerful. However, I'm still unable to use the true meaning of the inescapable net. I haven't refined it enough. Ho Fei and Kuroa's strength had improved a lot, but the gap between them and Qin Yu was still too obvious. Qin Yu didn't even need to use the divine spear waning snow. Just the God-sealing pagoda was enough to trap the two who had just formed the soul Jin Dan. They were simply not on the same level. Spiritual treasures are very important. However, your own cultivation is even more important. You all also need to train seriously. Qin Yu instructed. Then he smiled. Well then, let's go and pay these low-quality divine spiritual stones. Qin Yu first used his divine awareness to pass through the Jianglan's realm and observe the surroundings. Only then did Qin Yu and his brothers stealthily appear at the end of the mine's serene tunnel. Let's go. Qin Yu and his brothers each held several low-quality divine spiritual stones in their hands. Then they calmly walked out. The 3 brothers couldn't possibly walk while carrying a large pile of divine spiritual stones. Going around the tunnels, Qin Yu and his brothers continued to advance. Fortunately, deities mostly had very good memories. Although they had only entered the mine once, the 3 of them still remembered the path clearly. After passing through the tunnels, Qin Yu also discovered many miners. Sai Big Brother, look. Ho Fei said in a low voice. All of them have tools in their hands. Qin Yu looked. Sure enough, all of the miners had a small pouch in their hands. Within the pouch was a tool. Some of the miners were holding those tools in their hands. It was precisely a shovel-like tool. Used for mining. Qin Yu frowned. Qin Yu immediately recalled that when he had just arrived in the divine realm, that squad leader Huang Su had once said that the weak people who had just ascended were simply unable to split open the rocks of the divine realm with their bare hands. At that time, Huang Su had used a battle blade to demonstrate. Mining with one's bare hands is impossible. One must have tools. However, why don't the three of us have any? Qin Yu was puzzled in his heart. Big brother, there's a place that we've never been to. Ho Fei flipped his hand and took out an item. It was the house key that had been given to them when they arrived. I hope that no one noticed that we've never entered the house. Qin Yu and the other two immediately increased their speed and quickly passed through the underground mine tunnel. After arriving on the surface, they ran directly towards the house. The house occupied a very large area. Densely packed rooms were placed in a picturesque disorder. On the door of each room there was a number. Qin Yu and the other two easily found their own rooms. Their rooms were next to each other. There was a hexagonal hole on the door. Qin Yu and the other two placed their respective hexagonal keys into the hole. With a sound, the three doors opened. The three rooms each had a bed, a praying mat, a large pouch, a small pouch and a shovel. Qin Yu and the other two entered the same room. This shovel is a low-quality divine artifact. Qin Yu pointed at the shovel and said, in the divine realm, the status of a low-quality divine artifact is like the most common iron weapon that can be seen everywhere in my hometown, the Qianlong continent. The status of a mid-quality divine artifact is equivalent to the iron weapon in the Qianlong continent. It's much more precious. As for a high-quality divine artifact, it's equivalent to the black iron weapon in the mortal realm. Once Qin Yu said those words, Ho Fei and Kuro easily understood the difference between the three levels of divine artifact. Some of the knowledge regarding divine artifacts and heavenly divine artifacts was obtained by Qin Yu when he was in the immortal, devil and demon realm. He had flipped through some golden scrolls that talked about the general knowledge of refining artifacts. Big brother, it seems that low-quality divine artifacts are the most common type in the divine realm. Even ordinary deities can use them. However, in the immortal devil and demon realm they are so important. Ho Fei sighed and said. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, that's right. In the divine realm, as long as one knows how to refine artifacts, one can casually refine low-quality divine artifacts. If one has a bit of skill, one can refine mid-quality divine artifacts. If one is more powerful, one can refine high-quality divine artifacts. Only some master artifact craftsmen are able to refine heavenly divine artifacts. Generally, deities use divine artifacts. The higher their status, the more powerful divine artifacts they use. Heavenly deity-level experts mostly use heavenly divine artifacts. Perhaps some heavenly deities in dire straits would also use high-quality divine artifacts. Qin Yu said with a smile. There are also differences between heavenly deities. A low-level heavenly deity in dire straits might not necessarily be better off than a high-level deity with status and background. As for people like Qin Yu, they were only at the deity level yet possessed grand mist spiritual treasures. Qin Yu and his brothers were all holding the mining shovels in their hands. After all, they had to put on an act. As for the two bags, one big and one small, the three brothers also knew the reason for it. The small bag was used to store divine spiritual stones during mining. As for the big bag, it was used to store divine spiritual stones during the year's mission. Look, there are jade slips in this bag. Ho Fei pointed to the inside of the big bag and said in surprise. Jade slips were the main tools used by the lower realms like the immortal, devil and demon realm to store information. However, in the divine realm, jade slips were extremely cheap items. As for the golden scrolls that had a much larger capacity and were not easily damaged, they were items that only people with status and sufficient wealth would use. Qin Yu swept through the jade slips with his divine awareness, and immediately knew the contents of the jade slips. It turned out that the jade slips described in detail the things that one needed to know when mining in the divine spiritual stone mine. Furthermore, it also specifically explained the two bags, the mining shovels and the jade slips. They were only to be loaned to the miners and must not be damaged. These were to be passed down to the next miner. Truly thrifty. Qin Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ho Fei also took the jade slips and swept through them with his divine awareness. Fuck, they even want us to cut the large divine spiritual stones into regular sizes. Truly troublesome. Ho Fei looked at the divine spiritual stones in his hand. Fortunately, Uncle Fu only gave us regular sizes. The divine spiritual stones of the divine realm were measured by pieces. However, there were both large and small pieces. The entire divine realm had a clear regulation regarding the size of a low-quality divine spiritual stone. When mining, one must cut the divine spiritual stones into small pieces. Fortunately, the hardness of the divine spiritual stones was relatively low. Thus, they were already able to be cut apart using the mining shovels. 3,600 divine spiritual stones were placed into that large bag. More than half of the bag was filled. Ho Fei and Kuro also returned to their respective rooms. They took out that large bag and also placed 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones into it. Qin Yu and his brothers each carried the large bag and began to walk toward the tax collection area. After arriving at the tax collection area, Qin Yu and his brothers encountered some warriors that were in charge of this area. "You're here to pay divine spiritual stones. Oh, follow me," a captain-like leader said indifferently. Time passed. Qin Yu and his brothers were somewhat interested in paying the low-quality divine spiritual stones for the first time. After that, they began to pay the low-quality divine spiritual stones again and again. Inside the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, Qin Yu had been wholeheartedly studying the 900 scrolls of the Array Path. As for these 900 scrolls of the Array Path, Qin Yu did not casually skim through them. Instead, he was wholeheartedly studying and comprehending each and every formation array example in detail. Close to 60,000 years of effort. Qin Yu had finally finished reading all 900 scrolls of the Array Path. This time, he did not just read them in a rush. Instead, he had completely understood all of the formation arrays and barriers. Huff! Qin Yu put away the final golden scroll and heaved a long sigh of relief. Qin Yu felt as if he was wandering in a boundless ocean. Furthermore, each and every drop of water in the ocean was a formation array. Qin Yu was in this ocean of formation arrays and was unceasingly studying each and every drop of water. However, Qin Yu had a feeling that the formation array examples in the 900 scrolls of the Array Path were merely some of the small examples in the ocean of formation arrays. The Array Path was too complex and too vast. It was too difficult to completely understand and control it. "Master!" Uncle Fu appeared at the door. I heard Master's voice. "I believe Master has finished reading all 900 scrolls of the Array Path." Qin Yu's eyes lit up. He knew that Uncle Fu had some understanding of the Array Path. He immediately asked, "Uncle Fu, is there anything you can teach me about the Array Path?" Uncle Fu smiled. "Master, I can only say some of what old Master said back then. The Array Path is like an ocean of formations. Every formation array is just a drop of water. As for the formation array examples in these 900 scrolls, they are just a small corner of the ocean of formations. According to Old Master's words, to comprehend the Array Path, you have to deduce a bigger area from this small corner. Then, you have to sort it out and summarize it to comprehend the essence of the entire ocean of formations." Qin Yu nodded in agreement. Formation arrays started from simple to complex. As it got harder and harder, it got more and more profound. As for how profound and complicated it would be, Qin Yu was unable to imagine it himself. It was just like the overlay formation array. The complexity of a formation array seemed to be endless. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to be able to perfectly coordinate and control so many overlay formations. Old Master once said that the formation array examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path all started from the most basic formation array to the slightly more difficult formation array. To comprehend the first stage of the array path, you have to follow the formation array examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path and continuously deduce them. The more you deduce, the more accurate the first stage of the array path will be. Uncle Fu said solemnly. Qin Yu recalled. Uncle Fu once said that the craftsman god Che Ho Yuan spent 1,000,000 years to comprehend the first stage of the array path. Then he spent 10,000,000 years to comprehend the second stage of the array path. But later on, Che Ho Yuan spent 1,000,000,000 years to comprehend the first stage of the array path. Then, in just 2 hours, he comprehended the second stage of the array path. Perhaps, I understand the correct way to study the array path. Qin Yu nodded. Currently, he had only taken the first step. The next step was to continuously deduce the various branches of the formation array. Master, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Another 100 years have passed. Master needs to pay the low-grade divine spiritual stones. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Chapter 501. Qin Yu and his brothers appeared in a dark corner of a certain tunnel in the depths of the divine spiritual stone mine. Without anyone noticing, Qin Yu and his brothers appeared out of thin air. After that, the 3 brothers each held a mining shovel in one hand and a small bag in the other. Ho Fei and Kuro both had confident smiles on their faces. After nearly 60,000 years, the 2 of them had managed to completely refine their respective Grand Mist spiritual treasures. If it wasn't for the fact that these 2 Grand Mist spiritual treasures were left behind by Che Ho Yuan and were relatively easy to refine, then the 2 of them would likely not be able to refine them even if they were to spend 10 times more time. As for Qin Yu, although he had been researching the 900 scrolls of the array path, a single path was equivalent to 10,000 paths. Che Ho Yuan had reached the high-level heavenly deity level by researching the array path. As for Qin Yu, during the process of researching the array path, his cultivation had also increased. The current Qin Yu's soul had already reached the high-level deity level. With the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, his spatial control had also reached the low-level heavenly deity level. The current me is already capable of flying. Qin Yu had a smile on his face. To fly in the divine realm, one did not have to use energy to resist the ground's gravity. Instead, one had to rely on one's spatial comprehension to control the space and eliminate the ground's gravity. Once one started to fly, one would not need to consume any energy at all. This Lu Xing's tear is truly peculiar. I am merely a high-level deity. Yet, by relying on it, I am able to possess the remarkable ability of a low-level heavenly deity. Qin Yu grew even more curious about Lu Xing's tear. As for this Zhuochome who left behind Lu Xing's tear, who was she? Qin Yu had also asked Uncle Fu whether or not he knew of Zhuochome. However, Uncle Fu's reply was, Zhuochome. I've never heard of her. Master, some of the major characters in the divine realm possess titles. As for their true names, only some of the upper echelons would know of them. The majority of the god-kings of the divine realm only possessed some resounding titles. For example, the utmost East Sage Emperor of the 8 Great Sage Emperors. He was only known as the utmost East Sage Emperor. As for his true name, not many people knew of it. The 3 brothers chatted idly for a while. After going through a few underground tunnels, they encountered quite a few miners. The further they went, the more miners they encountered. Hey, Shirtian! Ho Fei's eyes lit up when he saw someone in the distance. Qin Yu also looked into the distance. The man and woman in the distance were Shirtian and Song Hui, who had ascended together with the 3 of them. Shirtian and Song Hui walked over with smiles on their faces. Brother Qin Yu, Brother Ho Fei, Brother Kuro, after almost 600 years, we finally meet again. Tian spoke very politely. Only once every 600 years, the probability was indeed very low. In reality, it was not that the probability was low, but because Qin Yu and the other two almost never appeared in the mine, it was naturally difficult to encounter them. Do the three of you know which village you will be assigned to in the future? Song Hui suddenly asked. Village? What do you mean? Ho Fei asked doubtfully. Tian and Song Hui were startled. Then they glanced at each other. It seemed that their eyes were filled with shock and confusion. Tian explained. Could it be that no one mentioned it to you when you were mining? All the ascenders, once they pass 1,000 years of mining, will be assigned to a certain village. Qin Yu came to a realization. However, there are differences between villages. The closer a village is to a city, the more tranquil the surrounding divine spiritual energy will be. As for the villages further away from the city, the divine spiritual energy will be even more berserk. Tian explained in detail. Thus, if we ascenders are to be assigned to a village near a city, although the divine spiritual energy will still be berserk, the berserk level will still be relatively low. We will still be able to absorb some of the divine spiritual energy. Qin Yu and his brothers completely understood. There were only 20 million people in Yuchi City. However, there were 200 million people outside the city. Some of the villages were near the city, while some were far away. Of course, everyone would want to squeeze into the nearest village. You all still don't know. In that case, why aren't you all hurriedly delivering some divine spiritual stones to that Lord Yenyu who assigned the villages? Tian advised with good intentions. If you were to deliver more divine spiritual stones, Lord Yenyu would arrange for you all to be assigned to a village near the city. Otherwise, you will only be assigned to a remote village. In a remote place, you will not be able to absorb a single trace of divine spiritual energy. Qin Yu and his brothers were unable to refrain from smiling. Bribe. As the three brothers possessed that many divine spiritual stones, would they need to go through so much trouble? Thank you, Brother Tian, for telling us, Qin Yu said with a smile. Suddenly at this moment, the ground started to tremble. The large group of Divine Realms people that were mining in the tunnel started to sway. Rumble! A tunnel not far away from them started to collapse. At the same time, rocks started to fall from the ceiling of the tunnel. The deities all hurriedly dodged the rocks. Even if they did not die after being struck by the rocks, they would still have to spend a large amount of divine energy to repair their bodies. Ah! Roar! A terrifying roar could be heard, and at the same time, a series of miserable screams could be heard. The faces of Tian and Song Hui changed dramatically. Tian hurriedly said, Brother Qin Yu, hurry up and leave. There seems to be some sort of danger there. Qin Yu and the other two didn't move. Seeing that Qin Yu and the other two didn't react, Tian and Song Hui had no choice but to flee by themselves. However, in the direction that Tian and Song Hui were rushing towards, cracks appeared on the stone walls of the tunnel. The sound of cracking could be heard as rocks fell down one after another. With a loud boom, the tunnel collapsed. Tian and Song Hui immediately ran in the opposite direction. They rushed past Qin Yu and the other two and rushed towards the underground tunnel to the right of Qin Yu and the other two. Everyone run! It's an underground cave dragon. Panicked shouts could be heard one after another. One by one, the deities rushed towards the safe underground tunnel. Many of the surrounding tunnels had already collapsed. Many deities were running towards the tunnel to the right of Qin Yu. Why are you still not leaving? The underground cave dragon is an extremely powerful demonic beast in the divine realm. Even high-level deities would have a hard time dealing with it. A youth wearing warrior armor said to Qin Yu and the other two. After saying those words, he ignored Qin Yu and the other two and quickly fled. Roar! Furious roars and miserable screams could be heard unceasingly. Qin Yu could even see blood spurting out from the depths of the tunnel to the left. Qin Yu and the other two looked towards that direction. The tunnel also started to shake. Underground cave dragon. A trace of a smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Ho Fei and Kuro were also eager to give it a try. The three of them had already refined their Grand Mist's spiritual treasures. They all wanted to test out how powerful this demonic beast was. Within the field of vision of Qin Yu and the other two, there were several hundred people frantically rushing towards the safe tunnel to the side of Qin Yu. However, right at this moment, the stone wall above this group of people suddenly split open. A claw could be seen piercing out from the stone wall. That claw grabbed onto a middle-aged man. Pili-pala sounds of bones shattering could be heard. That middle-aged man's eyes were filled with fear. However, all the bones in his body had been broken. In merely a blink of an eye, he had turned into bone fragments and minced flesh. His soul Jin Dan had also been shattered. At the moment when that claw grabbed a person to death, more and more claws pierced out from the stone wall above the tunnel. Every single claw was cyan black in color. They were close to 2 to 3 meters tall. Every single claw had 10 fingers. Simultaneously, the 10 fingers were covered with densely packed short blade-like barbs. In merely an instant, 70 to 80 claws pierced through the stone wall and grabbed deities to death one after another. The deities that were grabbed to death were all turned into bone fragments and minced flesh. Bang! The stone wall above the tunnel completely shattered. An enormous monster appeared before everyone's eyes. Underground cave dragon. Its length was several hundred meters. Its appearance was similar to an enormous centipede. Merely, it possessed a slender tail. That tail was at least 100 meters long. Below its body, there were at least several hundred cyan black claws. Its ice-cold eyes coldly looked at the group of panicking deities. Its claws were rapidly grabbing at them. Those deities were all panicking. However, at the same time, there were also many deities that angrily took out their battle blades or swords. However, their battle blades and swords were simply useless against the underground cave dragon. Just by looking at the tortoise-like protective shell on the underground cave dragon's torso, one would know how strong its defense was. Although it took a long time to describe, in reality, the underground cave dragon had only just charged out and started its massacre. That group of deities had only just started to resist. In total, it only took about 10 breaths of time. It is indeed powerful. Big brother, I will go first. Kuro's hands shone. The snow thread gloves were already on his hands. Soon after, Kuro grabbed his cloud-piercing spear and charged forward. The surface of the cloud-piercing spear was faintly flowing with a dark gold color. Kuro fiercely stomped on the ground. His body shot forward like an arrow leaving the bow. Ha! Kuro's gaze was like lightning. He suddenly exerted strength in his arms. His muscles bulged. His hands became sparkling and translucent. The cloud-piercing spear in his hands also shone. Heaven's startling spear. That black spear image carried boundless power. It tore through the air and let out a sharp whistling sound. It ruthlessly smashed onto the tortoise-like torso. A painful roar could be heard. That protective shell cracked open. That underground blood dragon's ice-cold eyes were burning with anger. It stared at Kuro and actually spoke in human language. You want to die? Qin Yu's expression changed. The defense of this underground blood dragon was even more abnormal than what Qin Yu had expected. Now that Kuro had refined the snow thread gloves and attacked with a cloud-piercing spear, he was only able to injure it. He had only injured it. For such a long body of the underground blood dragon, such a small injury would only cause it to be enraged. Xiao Hei, back off! Qin Yu shouted. At this moment, the underground cave dragon's attention was focused on Kuro. It did not continue to chase after those deities. Those deities immediately fled. None of them stayed to help Qin Yu and his two brothers. Big brother, this fellow's defense is too strong. Kuro rapidly retreated. As for the underground blood dragon, it moved its several hundred claws and instantly arrived before Qin Yu and his two brothers. Qin Yu's eyes shined. Oh, fast. At the same time, Qin Yu grabbed Hou Fei and Kuro and shot into the sky like lightning. "Big brother, you can fly?" Hou Fei and Kuro looked at Qin Yu in shock. "You two stand to the side first." Qin Yu let go of his hands. Hou Fei and Kuro landed on the ground. As for Qin Yu, he looked at the underground cave dragon with a smile on his face. At this moment, the underground blood dragon was also staring at Qin Yu. Although it was a monstrous beast from the divine realm, it still possessed the soul realm of a level 9 demon emperor. Naturally, it also possessed intelligence. The person before it could fly was a heavenly deity. Danger. This was the reaction of the underground cave dragon. Qin Yu floated in midair. With a flip of his hand, a small stone pagoda appeared. Qin Yu lightly smiled at the underground blood dragon and said, "Underground blood dragon? You shall be the first servant of the god sealing pagoda." An invisible ripple was shot from the god sealing pagoda toward the underground cave dragon. Humph, although this god sealing pagoda cannot handle heavenly deities, it is incomparably easy for it to handle monstrous beasts from the divine realm whose soul realm is extremely weak. Qin Yu had a smile on his face. A simple soul attack from the god sealing pagoda immediately caused the underground cave dragon to enter a muddle-headed state. Then, without any resistance, the underground cave dragon was easily sucked into the god sealing pagoda. Hou Fei and Kuro were dumbstruck as they watched the underground cave dragon disappear into thin air before their eyes. "It's gone." Hou Fei and Kuro looked at Qin Yu in astonishment. Then they looked at the god sealing pagoda in Qin Yu's hand. Qin Yu landed on the ground. He glanced at the tunnel behind them that most people had left. They really took their time. Qin Yu did not want to cause trouble. He directly sucked the god sealing pagoda into his body. Hou Fei and Kuro immediately walked to Qin Yu's side. "Big brother, was it sucked in by the god sealing pagoda?" Hou Fei excitedly asked. "What do you think?" Qin Yu said with a smile. "All right, the mind's army is here. Let's hurry up and leave." It seems like we can't leave." Qin Yu lightly smiled as he looked at the tunnel behind them. A figure transformed into a blur. In just a moment, it had traversed a distance of several kilometers. With lightning speed, it appeared before Qin Yu's group. Qin Yu's group recognized it. The person before them was the Empyrean god they had seen before. He was also the person in charge of the mine, the Empyrean god Yu Qiyong. Yu Qiyong was dressed in a long black robe. His face was resolute and cold. Yu Qiyong looked at the distant pile of flesh and bones. Then he coldly looked at Qin Yu's group. Frowning slightly, he said, "The three of you, did you see the underground cave dragon?" Qin Yu nodded and said, "Milord, the underground blood dragon slaughtered the people there, then fled like lightning." "Oh, those people who fled said that a spear-wielding man was fighting the underground cave dragon. Did you see him?" Yu Qiyong coldly looked at Qin Yu's group. Chapter 502. A man holding a spear fought a great battle against the subterranean blood dragon. Qin Yu was so angry that he wanted to curse. Why were those people that were saved by Qin Yu and his brothers so talkative? Right at the moment when Qin Yu and his brothers were looking at each other, rumbling sounds were heard. That was the sound of a large number of troops galloping. Qin Yu and his brothers looked toward the depths of the tunnel. They saw numerous divine realm warriors rapidly rushing toward them. That densely packed army gave off an oppressive feeling. "Milord, the 1,000 men of the 3rd Battalion have all arrived," a tall, robust man said respectfully. Yu Qiyong nodded indifferently. However, his gaze was still fixed on Qin Yu and his brothers. "Speak, where is the man holding a spear and fighting the subterranean cave dragon?" "Milord, we did not see him." Qin Yu slightly bowed and said. Hou Fei and Kuro stood behind Qin Yu without saying anything. Yu Qiyong examined the three of them with his gaze. He then turned around and looked at the battlefield that was filled with bones and flesh. He then looked at the tunnel walls that were torn apart by the subterranean cave dragon. "Where were you all earlier? Why didn't you see him?" Yu Qiyong said with a frown. Qin Yu pointed to a collapsed tunnel and said, "Milord, when that subterranean cave dragon attacked us earlier, I knew that it was merely a monstrous beast. Even though its attack power was very strong, its soul's realm was inferior to that of a deity's. Thus, the three of us hid within the collapsed rubble and waited until the subterranean cave dragon left before coming out." "You're pretty smart." Yu Qiyong nodded. With what Qin Yu said, it was very easy to explain why they didn't see anyone fighting the subterranean cave dragon. If they hid within the rubble, how would they be able to see other people fighting? Observe with their divine awareness. That rubble was several hundred meters away from the battlefield. Only low-level heavenly deities would be able to extend their divine awareness to several hundred meters away. The subterranean cave dragon went back into hiding. Yu Qiyong stared at the shattered tunnel with a deep frown on his face. Even if the subterranean cave dragon was killed, its corpse should still exist. Even a heavenly god realm expert would not be able to kill a cave dragon so easily. As for Qin Yu and the other two, from Yu Qiyang's point of view, only the leader, Qin Yu, had the soul of a high-level deity while the other two were merely low-level deities. It was impossible for him to be the one to deal with the subterranean cave dragon. "You can leave now," Yu Qiyong said coldly. Qin Yu said humbly and politely. Then the three brothers followed the safe tunnel that did not collapse and quickly left the interior of the mine. After Qin Yu and his brothers paid 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones, they entered a new underground tunnel in another region of the divine spiritual stone mine. The three of them walked all the way to an extremely deep and uninhabited region. Only then did the three of them enter the Jianglan's realm. Inside the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm. "Big brother, earlier, when that heavenly deity interrogated us about whether or not we saw anyone fighting against the subterranean cave dragon, I was extremely anxious. Never would I have expected that Big Brother would be able to think of an answer so quickly." Ho Fei laughed. Kuro also nodded gravely. "That Yu Qiyong is indeed powerful. He is a heavenly deity." Qin Yu understood in his heart. Although he was able to fly, he was only able to do so by relying on Lu Xing's tear. Furthermore, the energy within his body was divine energy and not heavenly divine energy. Heavenly deities that possess heavenly divine energy are much more powerful than me. Unless I use the divine spear waning snow, Qin Yu said with a light smile. Once he used the divine spear waning snow, it would not be too hard for him to kill low-level heavenly deities. "Well then, don't waste time. Continue training. The divine realm's body refinement technique that Uncle Fu gave you back then. How's your training going?" Qin Yu asked with a smile. Divine realm's body refinement techniques could be considered to be rather precious. However, within the bewitching God Temple, there were many of such body refinement techniques in the divine realm. Qin Yu himself was worried that he did not have enough time. He had practically spent all of his time researching the array path. Thus, he had not trained in any body refinement techniques for the time being. Qin Yu could only allow his body to naturally absorb divine energy to increase its strength. However, this sort of primitive method of training was too slow. Ho Fei shook his head and said, "I have yet to train in it." "Neither have I." Kuro also shook his head. "What's going on?" "I instructed Uncle Fu to pass those divine realms body refinement techniques to you. Why aren't you training in them?" In the divine realm, especially in the deity stage, body refinement is extremely important. Qin Yu said doubtfully. In the divine realm, energy was mainly divided into divine energy and heavenly divine energy. Among them, divine energy belonged to the more berserk and tyrannical type of energy. During the training process, the burden on the body was extremely large. Only by having a stronger body would one be able to possess a higher level of divine energy. On the other hand, heavenly divine energy was different. Heavenly divine energy was pure and gentle. Thus, body refinement only required one to be able to withstand the divine energy of a high-level deity. Of course, there were some heavenly deities who would pursue a stronger body. However, those were the minority. To heavenly deities, the best way to increase their strength was to comprehend more about space. Big Brother Kuro had a trace of a smile on his face. In the past 60,000 years, although Monkey and I did not train in any divine realm's body refinement techniques, we have been quietly training in order to increase the level of our soul. Ho Fei also said, "Mixed hair bird and my body are still not bad. At the very least, we have not reached the stage where we are unable to withstand the divine energy. Thus, we wish to increase the level of our soul before training our body." Increasing the level of our soul is also fine. Qin Yu thought for a moment before nodding his head. From Qin Yu's point of view, body refinement was much easier than increasing the level of one's soul. Body refinement only required a sufficient supply of divine energy and a bit of time. However, increasing the level of one's soul was too difficult. Ordinary deities would need tens of millions of years to reach the level of an intermediate deity. Ho Fei and Kuro relied on the cloud-piercing spear and black rod. Thus their speed might be fast. However, they would still need tens of thousands of years. Since his brother wanted to focus on increasing the level of his soul, Qin Yu did not force him. Soon after, Qin Yu returned to his room and started to comprehend the 900 scrolls of the array path. Ho Fei and Kuro also started to cultivate. The 900 scrolls of the array path were divided into killing arrays, trapping arrays, and defensive arrays. Qin Yu spent close to 60,000 years before he could carefully comprehend it once. And now, Qin Yu was not in a hurry to deduce higher-level or more complex arrays. Instead, he started to re-examine the array examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path. For the first 60,000 years, Qin Yu only managed to comprehend it completely. But now, Qin Yu wanted to use the examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path to completely comprehend it. He wanted to deduce many things from one example and completely understand the essence of these arrays. Time passed by. Qin Yu continued to study the most basic and fundamental arrays in the Sea of Arrays, or some slightly difficult arrays. These formation arrays that were at the bottom of the pyramid of formation arrays, Qin Yu was studying them over and over again. 30,000 years of effort. Qin Yu kept the 900 scrolls of the array path. At the same time, his closed eyes opened. There was a trace of excitement in his eyes. "Uncle Fu!" Qin Yu shouted. Uncle Fu heard Qin Yu's voice and immediately walked into Qin Yu's room. He said respectfully, "Master, what are your orders?" "Uncle Fu, let me ask you. The first level of the array path, is it to comprehend the essence of arrays from simple to complex, and to be able to think of any array in an instant?" Qin Yu's face was filled with excitement. That was because Qin Yu was able to sense that he seemed to have reached the first stage of the array path. At this moment, Qin Yu had a feeling that the arrangement of all kinds of formation arrays were all within his mind. When he closed his eyes, thousands upon thousands of different formation arrays would appear in his mind. At the same time, he could instantly think of the key points, weaknesses, and ways to break the arrays. This feeling of having everything under his control caused Qin Yu to feel extremely delighted. Uncle Fu smiled and looked at Qin Yu. "Master, as far as I know, among the experts who comprehended the first level of the array path, the fastest one took 100,000 years. Old Master spent 1,000,000 years to comprehend the first level of the array path. Master only spent close to 90,000 years. It seems that your talent in the array path is indeed very good." Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. Old Master once said that the state of comprehending the first level of the array Tao is, the moment you close your eyes, billions of array formations will appear in your mind. These billions of array formations are the ones that you've thoroughly studied before. At the same time, you have a feeling that you can easily deduce countless more complicated arrays. "Master, is that so?" "Yes, that's right. I even have a feeling that as long as I am given time, I can deduce arrays that are thousands of times more complicated," Qin Yu said. That was the feeling he had. The first level of the array path is the essence of the array path. However, the essence of the array path that everyone comprehended is different. Master, do you think that any array can be easily broken? Uncle Fu smiled and said. Qin Yu was stunned. Qin Yu wanted to nod because he had that feeling at this moment. After comprehending the foundation of the array, Qin Yu felt that he could break any array through the foundation. After all, any complicated array was evolved from the foundation of the array. Logically speaking, Qin Yu knew that in a short 90,000 years, it was impossible to reach the level of breaking any array. Master, I don't have a soul, so I can't comprehend the first realm of the array Tao. I can only deduce the most basic array formations and continue to deduce more and more complex ones, Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu in confusion. He didn't know what Uncle Fu meant. Uncle Fu continued. Master, I have followed old master for a very long time. I have also been deducing arrays for a very long time. At the beginning, when I was deducing arrays, I could deduce them in my mind. However, as the arrays became more and more complicated, I had to use golden scrolls to deduce an array. Qin Yu nodded. This was easy to explain. For example, if an ordinary person wanted to solve a simple problem, they could calculate it in their mind. However, if it was complicated, they would need to calculate it on paper. After researching for so many years, I have also recorded some more complicated arrays. At the same time, I have also used some golden scrolls. Master, during the time in the immortal devil and demon realm plus the 90,000 years, I have just deduced a killing array. Master, please have a look at it. Uncle Fu flipped his hand and took out 3 golden scrolls. He then handed them to Qin Yu. Uncle Fu, don't tell me that a single array needs 3 golden scrolls. Qin Yu's face was filled with shock. The most complicated arrays in the 900 scrolls of the array path probably only took up 1/10,000th of the space in a golden scroll. Uncle Fu nodded respectfully. Master, this is the most powerful array I've deduced from the killing array. There are 3 golden scrolls recorded in it. Please judge, Master. Chapter 503. Qin Yu glanced at Uncle Fu a few times before receiving the 3 golden scrolls. To ordinary deities, golden scrolls could be considered precious items. However, to the bewitching god temple, these items used for recording were in the tens of millions. Qin Yu immediately used his divine awareness to carefully inspect these 3 golden scrolls. How large was the capacity of these 3 golden scrolls? Even if he did not study them and merely skimmed through them, Qin Yu still spent an entire 4 years to finish reading these 3 golden scrolls. Killing formation. Qin Yu closed his eyes. The contents of the 4 years of reading completely appeared in his mind. Immediately, an incomparably enormous formation appeared in Qin Yu's mind. That formation was so complicated that Qin Yu was completely unable to see through its composition. I have already completely understood the basics. However, why am I unable to see through this formation at all? Qin Yu was somewhat anxious in his heart. Qin Yu was merely attempting to decipher this formation in his mind. Immediately, the formation began to change. Flames filled the sky. Within the flames, a large amount of lightning violently struck down. Qin Yu fiercely discarded all of the contents in his mind. Opening his eyes, the pale-faced Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu in front of him. His eyes were filled with confusion. Uncle Fu, why? Originally, I did not see any fire attribute or lightning attribute attacks at all. However, just by touching it for a moment, fire attribute and lightning attribute attacks appeared. If it was someone who did not have any understanding of formations, they would not know how powerful this formation was at all. However, Qin Yu could be considered to have stepped into the palace of formations. Although he was unable to understand the true power of this killing formation, when the formation was activated and the malevolent killing move was revealed, Qin Yu still understood. Master, I had once asked the old master a question. I asked the old master, since you had already comprehended the first level of the array path and even the second level of the array path, why did you research it again? Furthermore, Why did you spend 1 billion years to comprehend the first level of the array path? Uncle Fu smiled as he looked at Qin Yu. Master, do you know how the old master replied? Qin Yu shook his head. Uncle Fu continued. The old master said that when you learn to write 1, 2, and 3, you can claim to have comprehended all the ways to write numbers. Isn't that ridiculous? Qin Yu nodded. The old master also said that the array formation ocean is boundless. Many people only studied a small corner of the array formation ocean and then comprehended the essence of the array formation from that small corner. Is that the true essence? Qin Yu somewhat understood in his heart. If he only studied the 900 scrolls of the array Tao, the first stage of the array Tao that he comprehended might be wrong. Many people think that they are very impressive for comprehending the first level of the array path. But if they want to comprehend the second level of the array path, it is very, very difficult. The reason for that is because the wrong first stage of the formation path is not enough for them to comprehend the second stage of the formation path. Uncle Fu seemed to be recalling the words spoken by Che Ho Yuan back then. Qin Yu listened carefully. At this moment, it was as if Che Ho Yuan was using Uncle Fu to tell Qin Yu some important points. The old master once said that the more a formation expert comprehends about the array formation, the more they will believe that they have only comprehended a small corner of the array formation ocean. The old master comprehended the unprecedented third stage of the array path and became the #1 formation expert in the divine realm. Later on, he also became the #1 weapon refiner. However, the old master said himself that the array formation is still more profound than what he had comprehended. The third stage of the array path is not the end. The boundless sea of learning. Qin Yu felt an intense shock in his heart. He also felt ashamed. He was shocked because he had comprehended the third stage of the array path. The #1 formation expert in the divine realm thought that the third stage of the array path was not the end. He was ashamed because he had only studied it for 90,000 years and thought that he had comprehended the essence of the array formation. Don't shake a full bottle, shake a half bottle. Uncle Fu smiled and said, Old Master said before that there are many experts in the God realm who study the array path. Many of them have studied it for a longer time than Old Master. However, it is because they went astray when they first comprehended the first level of the array path. Even if they are heavenly gifted and spend a long time to comprehend the second level of the array path, it is impossible for them to comprehend the third level. Qin Yu nodded his head slightly. The Old Master continued to study it. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to comprehend the fourth stage of the array path. However, the Old Master said with certainty that he could sense the existence of the fourth stage of the array path. Unfortunately, he was unable to reach it. Uncle Fu sighed. Che Ho Yuan did not have any relatives. He only had a servant, Uncle Fu. The helplessness in his heart could only be told to Uncle Fu. Qin Yu could only sigh. The fourth stage of the array path. What level was it? I think I understand now. The more formations one deduces, the greater the understanding one has of the array formation ocean and the more accurate the essence of the array formation one has comprehended. Am I right? Qin Yu completely understood. He had merely comprehended the contents of the 900 scrolls of the array path. The essence of the array path that he had comprehended had already gone astray. The main reason was that there were too few examples of formations. Uncle Fu nodded his head. Then I shall start deducing. I shall deduce one profound and complicated formation array after another. I believe that the more I deduce, the more accurate the first stage of the array path will be. Qin Yu directly abandoned the essence of the array path that he had just comprehended. Instead, he began to deduce. When Uncle Fu saw this, a smile appeared on his face. While Qin Yu was deducing, he suddenly thought of a question. The craftsman god Che Ho Yuan said that there was a fourth stage of the array path. However, he was unable to reach it. Could it be because the second time he spent 1 billion years researching the essence of the array path was still not the most accurate? As Qin Yu thought of this, his heart trembled. 1 billion years was not enough. Qin Yu did not dare to think about it anymore. If the truth was like this, then how much time would he have to spend to deduce such a complicated formation array? Abandoning his wild thoughts, Qin Yu began to deduce the formation array with a wholehearted heart. Mining only lasted 1,000 years. Thus, only 100,000 years had passed in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm. When Qin Yu was woken up by Uncle Fu, he sighed. How could mining only last 1,000 years? Researching formation arrays was indeed a very time-consuming process. After 10,000 years of deduction, as he continued to deduce, Qin Yu began to realize more and more how vast and boundless the ocean of formation arrays was. At the same time, he began to feel even more ashamed of the essence of the array path that he had comprehended in the past. The higher one stood, the more one would be able to understand how vast and boundless the world was. Qin Yu was exactly like this. The more he comprehended, the more he felt that the ocean of formation arrays was boundless. Inside the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, Hou Fei and Kuro were waiting outside the house. As for Qin Yu, he had yet to come out from the house. Fei Xiaohei, the two of you wait outside for a moment. This was what Hou Fei and Kuro had heard when they arrived outside of Qin Yu's house. After that, the two of them began to wait outside. However, it had already been a long time. What's Big Brother doing inside the house? Hou Fei asked in confusion. Kuro also shook his head to indicate that he did not know. In 100,000 years, Hou Fei and Kuro's soul had already reached the mid-level deity level. To be exact, they had spent over 90,000 years to reach the mid-level deity level. Back then, when Qin Yu had first discovered this, he had been shocked for a long time. Although the cloud-piercing spear and black stick allowed Hou Fei and Kuro to comprehend the spatial laws more easily, but a short 100,000 years had still surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. Only after carefully asking did he find out. In the past 100,000 years, Hou Fei and Kuro's method of comprehending the spatial laws was fighting. The two of them fought frantically and comprehended the Tao in the midst of battle. Hou Fei and Kuro had originally comprehended the heaven-startling single stick strike through battle. Now that they were comprehending it through battle, their speed of comprehension was extremely fast. Hou Fei and Kuro were outside. As for Qin Yu, he was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. When the time limit of 100,000 years was reached, Qin Yu stopped deducing the formation arrays. After that, Qin Yu went to the stellar space to inspect it. After 100,000 years, exactly what level had his stellar space reached? In the stellar space, the present stellar space was extremely vast. Wisps of flower paste aura came from all directions. They passed through the membrane between the stellar space and the flower paste space and gathered towards the origin in the middle. The origin, the core of Qin Yu's cultivation, had shrunk in size. In the past it was the size of a fist, but now it was only the size of an egg. Furthermore, it was no longer dark gold. Instead, it was completely gray. Or rather, it was close to the color of the flower paste in the flower paste space. The late-stage origin. It reached the late-stage origin realm 20,000 years ago. Over the past 20,000 years, it has only shrunk slightly. Qin Yu's consciousness observed in puzzlement. Qin Yu didn't stop the origin from evolving. He allowed it to develop naturally. 20,000 years ago, Qin Yu had already observed the origin. Back then, he had already reached the late-stage origin realm. But what was the difference after 20,000 years? Size has shrunk slightly. Also, its color is closer to the color of the flower paste. Qin Yu's heart suddenly jolted. Qin Yu had discovered something strange. The egg-sized gray sphere had a very small space around it that was distorted. A rotating distorted space. Qin Yu had completely noticed this distorted space. Because the flower paste aura was absorbed in a rotating manner, Qin Yu didn't notice the distorted space at first. Qin Yu carefully observed. Gradually, Qin Yu's consciousness completely fused with the stellar space. The stellar space was something Qin Yu had refined. It wasn't difficult for it to fuse with the entire stellar space. Once it fused with the stellar space, Qin Yu could clearly sense the changes in the entire stellar space. With the origin as the center, the small rotating distorted space was gradually increasing in size at an imperceptible speed. Qin Yu only noticed this change when he fused with the stellar space. Could it be that this distorted rotating space will eventually occupy the entire stellar space? Qin Yu thought to himself. Currently, Qin Yu's comprehension of the spatial laws was not very high. However, he had a vague understanding. This vague understanding told Qin Yu that the current changes in the stellar space should be following the most perfect path. If he were to forcefully change it, he would only cause it to deviate from the correct path of evolution. After his consciousness returned to his body, Qin Yu opened his eyes and stood up. After pushing open the door, Qin Yu walked out with a smile on his face. He immediately saw the green lawn outside the house that was filled with vitality and the lake water that was as tranquil as a mirror. His mood was extremely good. "Fei Xiaohei, I've made you two wait for a while," Qin Yu said with a smile. Ho Fei laughed out loud and said, "It's fine. Big brother, let's go. We're finally able to leave the divine spiritual stone mine. Quickly, let's go." Qin Yu and his brothers didn't want to go too far. According to their plan, before they reached the level of heavenly deity, the three of them would follow the rules like outsiders. During this period of time, Qin Yu and his brothers would use the Jianglan's realm's second space to increase their strength. Qin Yu and his brothers each paid 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones, and were then led to an elegant pavilion by a woman. There were also several beautiful women in this elegant pavilion. Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro. A purple-clothed woman took out a jade slip. She read through it with her divine awareness and then raised her head to look at it. She then said indifferently, "You all have already paid enough divine spiritual stones in the past 1,000 years. From today on, you all are official members of the divine realm. Please wait a moment, our people have already gone to retrieve your identity title plates." After she finished saying that purple-clothed woman completely ignored Qin Yu and his brothers. Qin Yu and his brothers could only smile helplessly at each other. After paying the low-quality divine spiritual stones time and time again, they already knew about the cold attitude of these service staff. "Big Sister Li, I've heard that the mine's company Captain Wang wants to become your Dao companion, right? Company Captain Wang's conditions are pretty good. At the very least, he is a company captain. His salary is very high. He also has a house in Yuchi City that is used for cultivation." A white-clothed woman who was arranging the jade slips said with a smile. That purple-clothed woman from earlier said coldly, "I am not interested in that for the time being. Big Sister Li, don't always bitterly cultivate to become a heavenly deity. Among the many high-level deities, how many are able to become a heavenly deity? The probability of becoming a heavenly deity is too low. You cannot always be by yourself. It is also not bad to accept Company Captain Wang. Company Captain Wang ascended from the same cosmic space as you, right? He has already chased after you for several 100 million years." That white-clothed woman urged. The purple-clothed woman said coldly, "Dao companion. It is not impossible for us to become his Dao companion. How is it possible?" That white-clothed woman's eyes immediately shined. The purple-clothed woman still had a cold expression. "Unless he becomes a heavenly deity." Immediately, that white-clothed woman grew silent. If one were to become a heavenly deity, there would be a lot of people who would want to become a heavenly deity's wife. That was because when Dao companions dual cultivate, their souls would fuse. Thus, they would use the other party's comprehension to reach the heavenly deity realm. Of course, using the comprehension of the other party would only lower the difficulty of becoming a heavenly deity. It was not 100% success rate. Qin Yu and his brothers took a glance at each other. They could only remain silent. At this moment, a woman walked in from outside the house. She handed 3 title plates to the purple-clothed woman. Big Sister Lee, these are 3 identity title plates. The village that the 3 of them will be assigned to has also been determined. It is the Seal Field village. The purple-clothed woman received the 3 title plates. Then, she looked to the woman who handed the title plates to her with a puzzled expression. What did you say? The 3 of them will be assigned to the Seal Field village. Are you certain? Chapter 504. That's right, it's the Seal Field village, said the woman who handed over the title plates with absolute certainty. The purple-clothed woman nodded. She then handed the 3 title plates to Qin Yu and his brothers. These 3 title plates must be bound by blood. You must not lose them. As for the Seal Field village that you are going to, the purple-clothed woman frowned as she took a glance at the 3 of them. Did you all not give any divine spiritual stones to the people distributing the village? Qin Yu's heart moved. He still remembered that when he met with Song Hui and Shirtian, the Shirtian couple had asked Qin Yu and them to bribe the people distributing the village. However, Qin Yu and his brothers did not care about it at all. Now, it would appear that this Seal Field village ought to be an extremely poor village. That's right. What's wrong? Is this village located very far away from Yuchi City and unable to absorb the berserk divine spiritual aura? Qin Yu asked with a smile. You knew. The purple-clothed woman looked to Qin Yu in shock. You knew, yet you still deliberately did that. Seeing that the young man before her was still smiling indifferently even in such a situation, the purple-clothed woman was instead shocked. Immediately after, the purple-clothed woman regained her cold and detached expression. The Seal Field village is not only located in a remote area and unable to absorb the divine spiritual aura. There's something even worse. Qin Yu and the other 2 were unable to refrain themselves from raising their brows. Seeing the reaction of the 3 of them, the purple-clothed woman instead felt a burst of comfort. Without giving Qin Yu and his brothers the opportunity to ask, she said, Gao Xiaoqi, quickly come in. There are 3 newly ascended people here that need to be arranged into the Seal Field village. This mission will be handed to you. A golden-haired youth wearing battle armor walked in. With a frown on his face, he looked to the purple-clothed woman. You said Seal Field village. That's right. What's wrong? You're not willing. The purple-clothed woman looked to this Gao Xiaoqi. Gao Xiaoqi snorted coldly. I'm not that scared. If you have the ability, then don't change the appearance of the army's standard battle armor. In the room, the white-clothed woman who was arranging the jade slips laughed. This Gao Xiaoqi ignored her. Instead, he looked to Qin Yu and his brothers. The 3 of you follow me. Qin Yu and the other 2 followed Gao Xiaoqi out of the mine. Just as they left the mine, they saw a shocking scene. The standard armor on Gao Xiaoqi's body began to change. In the end, it turned into a long robe that covered his body. Qin Yu and the other 2 recalled what the white-clothed woman had said before they left. If you have the ability, don't change the appearance of the army's standard armor. Brother Gao, why did you change into this standard armor? Qin Yu asked. Gao Xiaoqi glanced at Qin Yu and asked, Are the 3 of you newcomers who have just ascended 1,000 years ago? Yes, what's wrong? Qin Yu asked in confusion. Ho Fei and Kuro also stared at Gao Xiaoqi. As for Gao Xiaoqi, he looked at Qin Yu in disbelief for a long time. It's nothing. However, in just a short 1,000 years, the 2 of them managed to reach the mid-level deity stage. As for you, I am unable to see through you at all. I estimate that you have reached the high-level deity stage. How could this be? It had only been 1,000 years. Could it be that you all ascended from the heavenly heart realm? Ascended from the heavenly heart realm? Qin Yu and the other 2 were all puzzled. Gao Xiaoqi sighed. There are some differences between the cosmic spaces of the same level in the lower realms. For example, the Green Demon realm. Only one ascended every 100 million years. As for the stronger heavenly heart realm, one ascended every several hundred years. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. In the cosmic spaces, the mortal realm was one level. The immortal devil and demon realm, dinosaur realm and other cosmic spaces were also one level. The divine realm was another level. There were many cosmic spaces of the same level as the immortal devil and demon realm. However, even if they were of the same level, there were still differences in strength. For one to ascend every several hundred years, the frequency was indeed very high. In the immortal devil and demon realm, including the dark star realm, only one ascended every million years. Some of the extremely powerful experts of the heavenly heart realm were mid-level deities after ascending to the divine realm 1,000 years ago. I saw that the three of you were so powerful. That's why I thought that you all were from the heavenly heart realm, said Gao Xiaoqi with a smile. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, there are many cosmic spaces of the lower realms. Some of the people with fast cultivation speed might not necessarily be from the heavenly heart realm. Hey, Brother Gao, why did you change the appearance of your battle armor? Hou Fei asked. Qin Yu and Kuro also looked to Gao Xiaoqi. This was also what they were puzzled about. Gao Xiaoqi looked to Qin Yu and his brothers and said helplessly, could it be that the three of you don't know that the allocation of ascenders to the village is a very important matter? You all should have paid a bit of compensation for your hard work. That way, you wouldn't have been assigned to remote villages, such as this Sealfield village. So what if it's Sealfield village? What does it have to do with you changing the appearance of your battle armor? Hou Fei continued to ask. Gao Xiaoqi swallowed his saliva and said, you all must be careful. For a village like this Sealfield village that is located in the most remote region, not only would they have to pay taxes to the city master's mansion every 1,000 years, they would also have to pay taxes to the leaders of some powerful powers. Leaders of powerful powers. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. They are the Mountain Kings, said Gao Xiaoqi clearly. Think about it, Yuqi City is only able to accommodate 20 million people. There are still 200 million people outside. The people outside have a much more difficult life. As for the Ascenders, which one of them wasn't a formidable person in their original cosmic space? Thus, many of them came to the desolate regions and occupied the mountains as kings. Kuro started to frown. Hou Fei blurted out, fuck, aren't they bandits? Qin Yu was very understanding. If the ascended experts were always at the bottom, it was normal for them to rebel. Does the city master's mansion not care? Qin Yu asked. Gao Xiaoqi sneered and said, city master's mansion. The city master's mansion would only occasionally put on a show. As long as those powers do not affect the rule of the city master's mansion, the city master's mansion would not care about them. Furthermore, the cities in the divine realm are fixed. There are too many people in the divine realm. The city master's mansion is disinclined to care about them killing each other. It's not easy to occupy a mountain as kings. The villages are also filled with deities. If those people who occupy a mountain as kings force the villagers too much, wouldn't the villagers retaliate? Qin Yu said. Gao Xiaoqi sighed and said, you all are mistaken. While there are many people who occupy a mountain as kings, the powers that dare to make the villages pay taxes regularly are all major powers. Ordinary small powers would not dare to do such a thing. Major powers. How big are they? Qin Yu frowned. Gao Xiaoqi sighed. There are 3 major powers outside of Yuqi City. If the city master's mansion were to be ruthless, they would indeed be able to eliminate these 3 major powers. However, the city master's mansion is unable to do so. That's because, in order to eliminate these 3 major powers, at the very least, several tens of heavenly deities would have to die. Say, do you think that the city master's mansion with only 100+ heavenly deities would be willing to pay such an enormous price? Qin Yu and his brothers were all shocked. In order to eliminate these 3 major powers, several tens of heavenly deities would have to die. As far as I know, the Sealfield village is under the control of one of the 3 major powers, the Black Dragon Pool. As for the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, he is a super expert ranked in the top 5 within the Yuqi City. Gao Xiaoqi sighed and said, Immediately, Qin Yu and his brothers no longer had any thoughts of resisting. Why would a super expert ranked in the top 5 within the Yuchi city become the leader of a major power? You all also understand why I had to change the appearance of the standard battle armor, right? Although the Black Dragon Pool would not truly become enemies with the City Master's mansion, they are fond of bullying nobodies like us the most. As for you ordinary people, at the very most, they would rob you and not harm your lives. Gao Xiaoqi said helplessly. Led by Gao Xiaoqi, Qin Yu and his brothers walked for 3 entire days and nights from the divine spiritual stone mine before finally arriving at the remote Sealfield village. At the same time, Qin Yu also learned about the matters within the Yuchi city. The closer one was to the Yuchi city, the safer one would be. As for the areas that were relatively far away from the Yuchi city, they would be under the control of the various major bandits. These bandits that had occupied the mountains and declared themselves kings also possessed different statuses. For example, the 3 major powers like the Black Dragon Pool dared to collect taxes from the various large villages in remote areas. Thus, they would naturally live the most comfortable lives. As for some of the smaller powers, they would rely on robbing and slaughtering. For a remote village like the Sealfield village, not only would they have to pay taxes to the City Master's mansion, they would also have to pay taxes to the Black Dragon Pool. The Sealfield village occupied an extremely vast area. With a rough glance, one could see that there were at least several thousand houses. Qin Yu and his brothers nodded in their hearts. At the very least, this Sealfield village was not too desolate. The population of the Sealfield village is over 10,000. Can be considered a small village. Large villages all have several 100,000 people. Gao Xiaoqi gasped in admiration. Qin Yu immediately understood. There were 200 million people outside of the Yuchi city. With 200 million people, it was normal for a village to have over 10,000 people. This is the village chief's home. There are many things that the village chief will tell you all about. Gao Xiaoqi walked to a courtyard in a very familiar manner. The entrance to the courtyard was wide open. There were 3 middle-aged men chatting and laughing within the courtyard. Gao Xiaoqi walked in and said to the tallest middle-aged man, "Village Chief Fan Su, you should have already received the notice. These are the 3 newly arranged ascenders. From today on, they will be members of your Sealfield village." Fan Su was at least 2 meters tall. He had a tall stature and had a very gentle and quiet appearance. Holding a feather fan in his hand, Fan Su walked toward Qin Yu and his brothers with a smile on his face. "I am the village chief of the Sealfield village, Fan Su. You all should be Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro, right? These are some of the things that you must pay attention to in the village. I have already prepared them for you all." As he said that, Fan Su handed over a jade slip. Qin Yu received the jade slip. "Village Chief Fan Su, I am Qin Yu. This is my second brother, Ho Fei. This is my third brother, Ho Fei." Qin Yu swept through the jade slip with his consciousness. He then cupped his hands and said, "Village Chief, us 3 brothers will not disturb you any longer. Farewell. Brother Gao Xiaoqi, thank you for escorting us here. Farewell." Qin Yu and his brothers straightforwardly left. After seeing that I have to pay taxes twice on the jade slip, he was not surprised at all. He just left so straightforwardly. Strange. Fan Su fanned himself with his feather fan. He then looked at Gao Xiaoqi. "Yes, I have already told them on the way here." Gao Xiaoqi said with a smile. "Village Chief Fan Su, I will also take my leave." Fan Su nodded. He then turned and walked toward his 2 friends. He muttered, 3 brothers. 3 brothers ascending at the same time. That is rare." After reading that jade slip, Qin Yu came to know about some important matters. The taxes would be paid once every 1,000 years. The city lord would have to pay 1,000 low-grade divine spiritual stones every 1,000 years. As for the Black Dragon Pool, they would have to pay 1,500 low-grade divine spiritual stones every 1,000 years. There were three main ways for ordinary people to earn low-grade divine spiritual stones. First, they could go to the divine spiritual stone mines like ascenders. After 1,000 years, other than the amount of divine spiritual stones they had to pay, there would be a lot left. Second, they could go to the abandoned mines to find divine spiritual stones. If they were lucky, they would be able to find them. The third method was work. Work for the city lord's mansion. Work for people with power and influence. There were many different kinds of work. Their salaries were all paid with divine spiritual stones. Of course, other than these three methods, there were also some other things. For example, they could go to the abandoned areas to search for rare materials, precious medicinal herbs, ores and so on. They could be sold in the city. Merely, this sort of work was relatively dangerous. Finding precious medicinal herbs and materials also required one's keen eyesight. It was not something that ordinary people could accomplish. Just like that, Qin Yu and his brothers peacefully settled down in the Sealfield village. The three of them easily built a manor. Usually, there would be many people from the Sealfield village coming over to greet them. Qin Yu and his brothers spent the majority of their time in the Jianglan's realm. However, they would occasionally come out every day. Thus, they knew many people from the village. Soon 300 years had passed. Qin Yu and his brothers passed their days very peacefully. And today, the day of tax payment had arrived. The tax payment this time was to be paid to the Black Dragon Pool. The tax payment day of the Black Dragon Pool was different from the tax payment day of the City Lord's mansion. All of the people in the Sealfield village had gathered in front of the village chief's residence. No one dared to not pay the tax of the Black Dragon Pool. If they did not pay the tax to the City Lord's mansion, the City Lord's mansion would only punish them. However, the people of the Black Dragon Pool would directly kill those who did not pay the tax. "Brother Li Liao, how is it?" The two men walking side by side began to chat. "Xing Yuan, I am truly at my wit's end. Ziyun's parents are too stubborn. Although you and Ziyun are affectionate and righteous, her parents insist on you being able to buy a house in Yuchi City in order to marry their daughter to you," Li Liao said helplessly. Xing Yuan heaved a long sigh. This Xing Yuan was precisely the previous Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm. The Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm was merely an ordinary person in the Divine Realm. He did not bribe the people in charge of allocating the village. Thus he was also allocated to this place. When they were in the mine, the frequency that Qin Yu and his brothers came out was too low. Thus they did not encounter Xing Yuan. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Even if you kill me, you won't have them. Xing Yuan tightly clenched his fists. He was extremely angry. In all those years in the Dark Star Realm, he did not have any feelings for Ziyun. Thus, when he arrived in the Divine Realm, he did not even think about this aspect. He only wanted to bitterly train. However, after he met Ziyun, this man and woman became completely hot-headed and entered into a state of madness. Ziyun grew up in the Divine Realm. Thus, her parents' views were deeply rooted. They wanted their daughter to live a good life in the future and not have to worry and be afraid in the Sealfield village. They were determined to have Xing Yuan buy a house in Yuchi City before coming back to talk about it. "Xing Yuan, don't be too stubborn. We men should properly train. When the day comes when we become heavenly deities, wouldn't the number of women that want to marry you break through the threshold?" Li Liao consoled. However, Li Liao also knew how difficult it was to become a heavenly deity. Xing Yuan sighed. "Brother Li Liao, you do not understand my frame of mind. Once one was immersed in feelings, one would not be able to extricate oneself." Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. Brother Xing Yuan." Xing Yuan raised his head and looked over. He saw three youths walking over together. Xing Yuan immediately recognized the smile and temperament of the leading man. He said in astonishment, "Lu Xing, it's you. You've also arrived in the Divine Realm." Chapter 505. At the moment when Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan, His heart was filled with astonishment. There were so many villages outside of Yuchi City. Who would have thought that they would actually be placed together? Furthermore, in the past 300 years, he had not encountered them even once in the village. Qin Yu understood that it was mainly because he had not come out often enough. The majority of his time was spent in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm studying the array path. Xing Yuan, you also know Qin Yu and his brothers? Li Liao said in surprise. Qin Yu and his brothers all knew Li Liao. Li Liao was the type of person who would become familiar with anyone. He would be able to talk a lot with anyone. Qin Yu. Xing Yuan was slightly surprised. Qin Yu smiled and said, Brother Xing Yuan, I actually have two names. When I was in the immortal realm, devil realm and demon realm, I called myself Qin Yu. And when I was in the dark star realm, I was called Lu Xing. In the future you can just call me Qin Yu. So that's the case. Xing Yuan nodded. Even now, Xing Yuan had never doubted Qin Yu's identity. He had thought that Qin Yu had only come up with this name because he was adventuring in the immortal realm, devil realm and other places. Brother Xing Yuan, let me introduce you. This is my second brother Ho Fei. This is my third brother Kuro. When Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan, his mood couldn't help but become very good. Ho Fei and Kuro both smiled and bowed. Xing Yuan also squeezed out a smile and bowed. When Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan earlier, he already felt that Xing Yuan had some sort of difficulty. At this moment he felt it even more. Immediately he asked, Brother Xing Yuan, I can see that you seem to have something on your mind. Xing Yuan, look, Li Liao suddenly said. At the same time he pointed to the distance. In the distance, a middle-aged couple was walking toward the village chief's house with a purple-clothed woman. Xing Yuan's gaze was immediately locked onto that purple-clothed woman. He was unable to look away for a long time. Big brother, this Xing Yuan has taken a fancy to that girl. Ho Fei giggled beside Qin Yu. Qin Yu and Kuro also smiled. Brother Xing Yuan, I never would have thought that after ascending to the divine realm for such a short period of time, our Dark Star Realm's Gold Punishment Lord already has a woman he loves. I must congratulate you on this matter. Haha, Qin Yu joked. Contrary to Qin Yu's expectations, Xing Yuan heaved a long sigh. Gold Punishment Lord. In the God realm, any status in the lower realms is useless. Qin Yu nodded in understanding. Among the experts of the God realm, there are those who grew up in the God realm, and there are also those who ascended from the lower realms. Cosmic spaces like the immortal, devil and demon realm numbered in the tens of thousands. The status of the lower realm is indeed nothing. However, Brother Xing Yuan, you like that woman. Why did you sigh? Qin Yu asked curiously. Beside him, Li Liao also shook his head. Xing Yuan shook his head and sighed. I'm ashamed. Speaking of which, this happened on the first day I arrived at Sealfield village. At that time I already encountered. Ziyun and I are both willing. However, her parents requested it. You should also know of my difficulties. Xing Yuan's face was filled with bitterness. Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro glanced at each other. The Grand Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm was actually distressed to such an extent because of 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Xing Yuan, leave this matter to me. Qin Yu directly said via divine awareness voice transmission. Hearing the voice in his mind, Xing Yuan looked to Qin Yu in shock. In the divine realm, if one wanted to use divine awareness voice transmission, one must at least be able to separate one's divine awareness from one's body. However, only mid-level deities could separate one's divine awareness from one's body. Qin Yu had ascended after him. It had only been over 1,000 years. How did Qin Yu become a mid-level deity? Xing Yuan simply did not know that Qin Yu's soul was not a mid-level deity. Instead, it was a high-level deity. Xing Yuan, don't be surprised. It's a house in Yuchi City. Very well, after we finish paying the taxes, I'll accompany you to Yuchi City to buy a house. What do you think? Qin Yu continued to speak via divine awareness voice transmission. Xing Yuan was unable to speak via divine awareness voice transmission. Thus, he could only nod his head gratefully. Merely, Xing Yuan was also puzzled. Why would Lu Xing, Qin Yu, be able to take out such a huge sum of 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones? At this moment, no less than 10,000 people were gathered outside of the Seal Feel Village's village chief's courtyard. Who would dare to not come when the people of the Black Dragon Pool were collecting taxes? When Qin Yu and the others arrived, they discovered that there were 30 men wearing battle armor standing at the very front. The leader of the group was a young man who was coldly looking at the surrounding people. Everyone, just like in the past, all those who have passed the divine tribulation will have to pay taxes. 1,500 low-quality divine spiritual stones per person for 1,000 years. Come one at a time, that young man said with a clear voice. Immediately, the residents of the Seal Feel village walked forward one by one. Once a person paid the taxes, that young man collected them with a flip of his hand. Storage divine artifact. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu couldn't help but be shocked. A subordinate of the Black Dragon Pool actually possesses a storage divine artifact. The Black Dragon Pool is truly powerful. Qin Yu didn't know that although the Black Dragon Pool possessed enormous power, they did not possess a lot of storage divine artifacts. Only those people were qualified to use them temporarily during the time of collecting taxes. After using them, they would still have to be turned over. Big brother, look. Ho Fei pulled Qin Yu's shoulder. Qin Yu followed the direction that Ho Fei was pointing at. Qin Yu saw that Ziyun and Xing Yuan were intimately together. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. One by one they went up to pay the taxes. Ziyun and Xing Yuan also went up to pay the taxes one after another. Little sister Ziyun. Upon seeing Ziyun, a smile emerged on that young man's face. You haven't forgotten about your big brother Qian, right? Ziyun was wearing a purple gauze gown. Her black hair was like ink as it poured down. She was indeed a beauty with a very elegant temperament. Ziyun lightly smiled and said, "How could I forget about Big Brother Qian? I never expected that in a short million years, Big Brother Qian would be able to reach such a level in the Black Dragon Pool. Little Yun, there's no need for you to pay the taxes," Lu Qian said with a chuckle. Xing Yuan, who stood beside Ziyun, frowned. Lu Qian took a glance at Xing Yuan and smiled. "Little Yun, who is this low-level deity? Is he a new servant that your family has hired?" "Servant?" Xing Yuan and Ziyun's expressions slightly changed. "Little Yun, the reason why I came to the Seal Feel village this time around is to collect taxes. The other reason is to propose marriage to your parents. We are childhood sweethearts and grew up together in the divine realm. Now that I have some accomplishments, I believe that you will not refuse me, right?" Lu Qian completely ignored Xing Yuan's existence when he spoke. Ziyun's parents walked over from behind. They had smiles on their faces and appeared very approachable. The gazes with which they looked to their daughter Ziyun were also filled with pampering. "Qian, to have my Ziyun suffer in the Black Dragon Pool with you, that is unacceptable," Ziyun's mother said. Lu Qian promptly said, "Auntie, you have watched me grow up. You also know of my feelings for little Yun. Tell me, would I let little Yun suffer? I have managed to endure all these years in the Black Dragon Pool. I have just purchased a house in the eastern district of Yuchi City. In the future, I will let little Yun enjoy life there." Ziyun's mother's eyes immediately shined. Ziyun's father also lightly nodded his head. Lu Qian immediately turned his gaze to Ziyun. "Well," Ziyun promptly said. Lu Qian did not say anything. Instead, he looked to Ziyun's mother. Sure enough, Ziyun's mother frowned and reprimanded. "Little Yun, your big brother Qian grew up together with you. Could it be that all those years of relationship are still inferior to the relationship between you and the Xing Yuan? You have just ascended from the lower realm. Instead of working hard to bitterly train, you are instead talking about love. What sort of accomplishments would someone like you have in the future?" Xing Yuan was choked by those words. "Auntie," Little Yun might have been deceived by the honeyed words of others. To be able to deceive little Yun like this right after ascending to the upper realm, a man like him who lives off a woman is truly powerful in his honeyed words. Little Yun cannot be blamed. Lu Qian said with a sincere expression. Zi Yun was so angry that her complexion turned deathly pale. As for Xing Yuan, he coldly looked to Lu Qian. Little Yun, this man is only a low-level deity. How could he possibly protect you? Anyone in the divine realm would be able to easily trample on him. A man like him is not worthy of you acting like this. Lu Qian urged. Not long ago I reached the level of high-level deity. Although high-level deities do not amount to much in the divine realm, they still possess the power to protect themselves. Furthermore, behind me is a heavenly deity expert from the Black Dragon Pool. At the very least, within the Yuchi city, there would not be anyone who would dare to bully the people of our Black Dragon Pool. Lu Qian's tone was very gentle. However, the disdain towards Xing Yuan in his words was something that anyone could tell. The residents of Seal Field Village also began to discuss this matter. The majority of them instead agreed with Lu Qian and felt that Ziyun should be with Lu Qian. However, the number of people that supported Xing Yuan was extremely small. As for Qin Yu and his brothers, they were watching from the side. Xing Yuan tightly clenched his fists. His knuckles had turned white. However, could he resist? His opponent was a high-level deity. Furthermore, he also had a small team of subordinates. The majority of them were mid-level deities. What could he, a low-level deity that had just ascended, possibly do? A bandit from the Black Dragon Pool actually dares to boast like this. It's as if being a bandit is something glorious. Who? Lu Qian's expression changed. He immediately looked toward the direction of the voice. Qin Yu smiled. Ho Fei and Kuro followed beside Qin Yu. Just like that, the three of them walked over. What's wrong? Could it be that what I said was wrong? You, a mere bandit from the Black Dragon Pool, actually dared to be this arrogant? Truly. As Qin Yu spoke, he shook his head and sighed. Lu Qian looked to Qin Yu with a frown. Who are you? I grew up in the Seal Field Village. I know practically everyone in the Seal Field Village. Where did you come from? Lu Qian was able to sense that Qin Yu's strength was not inferior to his own. Thus, he became more cautious and not as disdainful as he was toward Xing Yuan. Cinder. Qin Yu smiled. A deity that had only ascended 1,000 years ago. What's wrong? Little Yun, follow me home. Ziyun's mother suddenly frowned and said. Qin Yu immediately bowed to Ziyun's mother and said, Aunt, I am Xing Yuan's good friend. A few days ago, Brother Xing Yuan had found a precious medicinal herb in the desolate region. Its name is white feeler grass. I have some connections in Yuchi City and had just sold this white feeler grass for 3 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. As for these 3 million low-quality divine spiritual stones, I have yet to give them to Brother Xing Yuan. With a flip of his hand, a pouch appeared in Qin Yu's hand out of thin air. Storage divine tool. Seeing this scene, Ziyun's parents, Lu Qian and a large group of people all opened their eyes wide. Lu Qian was even more shocked. A high-level deity that had only ascended 1,000 years ago. Storage divine tool. Yuchi City even has channels to buy and sell medicinal herbs. Exactly what sort of background does this guy have? He, Lu Qian, was merely a small fry in the Black Dragon Pool. He knew that Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool would not take care of people with power for a small fry like him. Brother Xing Yuan, why are you in a daze? Since you gave me the white feeler grass, I naturally have to pay for it after selling it. There are a total of 300 high-quality divine spiritual stones in this pouch. You must count them properly. Qin Yu urged. Xing Yuan also woke up. He immediately said, Brother Qin Yu, thank you very much. I am merely astonished that this white feeler grass was sold for such a high price. As he said that, he extended his hand and received the pouch. After opening it and looking at it, no matter how calm Xing Yuan was, His hands were still trembling slightly. "Brother Xing Yuan, let me see." Ziyun was incomparably excited. She immediately opened the pouch to look. The reason why her parents did not agree to her being together with Xing Yuan was because of the matter regarding the house. Xing Yuan raised his head and looked to Qin Yu and his brothers with excitement. However, he only saw Qin Yu and his brothers winking at him. Chapter 506. To have to pay taxes once every 1,000 years. What sort of benefit would there be in paying taxes? In the past, Qin Yu was unable to understand. However, he now understood. At the very least, there was a perfectly maintained official road. Furthermore, there were troops stationed along the road. This would ensure that no bandits would come to rob them on the road. Little brother Qin Yu, I have walked this road countless times in my life. However, this time around, I am the happiest. Ziyun's father, Zi Futian, said while laughing. At this moment, Xing Yuan said respectfully, "Lord Father, how much longer until we reach Yuchi City?" Hearing that, Qin Yu and his brothers started laughing. "Fuck, you're not even married, yet you're already calling us Lord Father. Not bad." Ho Fei patted Xing Yuan's shoulder and joked. Zi Futian laughed and said, "Sealfield Village is too far away from Yuchi City. I reckon we'll still need 2 more days to reach there." On the road, Ziyun was chatting with her mother and did not say much to Xing Yuan. After 2 days, Qin Yu and the others finally saw Yuchi City in the distance. When they saw Yuchi City, it was as if they were seeing an enormous ferocious beast that had been coiling there the entire time. That ancient aura caused Qin Yu's heart to completely calm down. "Uncle Z, do you know how long this Yuchi City has existed for?" Qin Yu suddenly asked curiously. Zi Futian smiled and said, "Is there even a need to ask? The history of Yuchi City is as long as the history of the Divine Realm. It has existed for almost 102 quadrillion years. It's truly long." Qin Yu sighed. The various great cities of the Divine Realm have existed since time immemorial and have never been destroyed before. Furthermore, the divine spiritual energy within the cities is tranquil and gentle. One can easily absorb and refine it. As for why these cities are so peculiar, that is a secret that no one knows even now. Zi Futian sighed and said. Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro and the others all nodded. However, Qin Yu had another opinion in his heart. "I'm afraid that it's not that no one knows about this secret. Rather, it's that the people who knew about it did not spread it. Lord Father, can you tell us more about the God Realm?" "We know too little about the God Realm," Xing Tian said humbly. Qin Yu and the other two were also looking at Zi Futian. "Haha, I'm just an ordinary person in the God Realm. How much would I know about the God Realm? I only know a little about the eastern region of the God World." Zi Futian slowly began to speak. Of the 8 great sage emperors of the Divine Realm, the utmost East Sage Emperor's sphere of influence is located in the eastern part of the Divine Realm. As for the utmost East Sage Emperor himself, he lives on top of Mount Dazzling Gold. Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu and the others were shocked. They had no idea about this at all. You all know how special the space in the God Realm is. Flying in the God Realm is a luxury, unless he reached the heavenly God stage. And for a lifeless object to float off the ground was even more unimaginable. However, Mount Dazzling Gold is a floating mountain. Zi Futian said solemnly. A floating mountain, Mount Dazzling Gold? The residence of the utmost East Sage Emperor. Qin Yu remembered it in his heart. The utmost East Sage Emperor possesses a total of 64 cities. These 64 cities are of similar sizes. As for the core of the eastern region of the Divine Realm, it is Mount Dazzling Gold. Of course, it is impossible for us ordinary people to go to Mount Dazzling Gold. Zi Futian laughed and said, "After talking about Mount Dazzling Gold, let's talk about Yuchi City." Yuchi City was not called Yuchi City a very long time ago. The reason why it is called Yuchi City. now is because the city master of Yuchi City is Lord Yuchi. The number one clan in Yuchi City is the Yuchi clan. Yuchi City's lord is also the number one expert in the entire Yuchi City. Number one expert. How powerful is he? Qin Yu asked. Big brother Qin Yu, Yuchi City's lord is extremely powerful. Even that Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool is no match for Yuchi City's lord. That Zi Yun also walked over and said with a smile. Qin Yu nodded to Zi Yun. Zi Yun, do you know what level of expert Lord Yuchi is? It seems to be a high-level heavenly deity. Soon after, she nodded and said with certainty. However, the Yuchi City's city master is very powerful. No one in the entire Yuchi City is a match for him. Zi Fuqian smiled faintly and said, the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon, can be considered powerful. However, he was different from City Lord Yuchi. Back then, City Lord Yuchi had followed the utmost East Sage Emperor and fought all over the world. You had made great contributions. In the end, the utmost East Sage Emperor bestowed this city to City Lord Yuchi. Fighting in the north and south. There are large-scale battles in the God realm. Qin Yu was slightly surprised. Course, Zi Fuqian said with a smile. As long as one has lived in the divine realm for several billion years, they would know that in the divine realm, every 6 billion years, the various great powers of the divine realm would fight and kill each other. That fight was so tragic. Zi Fuqian sighed. Every 6 billion years, a war would break out across the entire divine realm. The Yuchi City's city master is a great character that could move about unhindered in the divine realm. Many heavenly deities have died under his hands. How could he be compared to someone like the Black Dragon Pool's Black Dragon? Zi Fuqian sighed. In Zi Fuqian's heart, the leader of the Black Dragon Pool was simply incomparable to the Yuchi City's city master. Come, let's enter the city. At this moment, Qin Yu and the others had already arrived at the city gate. The soldiers at the city gate inspected their identity plates and collected the entrance fee. Only then did they allow Qin Yu and the others to enter the city. After entering the Yuchi City, Qin Yu and the others were able to clearly sense the tranquility and docility of the divine spiritual energy. It was simply incomparably easy for them to absorb and refine the divine spiritual energy. In the Yuchi City, Qin Yu and the others directly proceeded toward the city master's mansion and the house sales office. All of the houses in the Yuchi City were controlled by the city master's mansion. Thus, when purchasing a house, one would naturally have to go to the same place. This was the first time that Qin Yu had come to the Yuchi City. Seeing the various buildings in the Yuchi City, Qin Yu had no choice but to admit that the overall layout of the Yuchi City was truly pretty good. It was arranged in picturesque disorder and was not messy in the slightest. Auction stores, medicine stores, weapons stores, leisure tea houses, stone carving stores, all kinds of stores appeared before their eyes. Qin Yu discovered that there were actually a lot of places to enjoy and relax in the divine realm. Move aside. Following a loud shout, a group of at least several hundred people were running on the street in an orderly manner. In the sky above this group of people was a man wearing a golden standardized battle armor. He was flying with his hands behind his back. It's a heavenly deity. Zi Yun pointed to the man in the sky in pleasant surprise. Qin Yu and the others also raised their heads to look. That man might be one of the division commanders or legion commanders of the Yuchi City's army. Zi Fuqian said to Qin Yu and the others. In the Yuchi City, 10 people form a small squad, 100 people form a medium squad and 1,000 people form a large squad. 10,000 people form a division and 100,000 people form a legion. In order to become a legion commander, one must first reach the heavenly deity level. As for the division commanders, they do not have this requirement. However, among the division commanders of the Yuchi City, there are many heavenly deity level experts. Zi Fuqian had lived for several billion years. Thus, he clearly knew a lot more things than the others. The house sales office is right ahead. Let's go and buy a house. Qin Yu said. Just like that, the group of people entered the city lord's mansion's house sales office. The house sales office was a very large two-story building. When Qin Yu and the others entered the house sales office, there were still many people there. There was only a single attendant in the entire house sales office. It was a yellow-clothed woman. There is a jade slip over there. The information about all of the vacant houses is inside. You all can look at it yourselves. If you find a house that you like, just tell me. The yellow-clothed woman did not even bother to take a glance at Qin Yu and the others. Big brother, this woman's attitude is truly bad. Ho Fei said to Qin Yu via divine awareness voice transmission. Qin Yu nodded and smiled. There's nothing we can do about it. All of the houses in the Yuchi city belong to the Yuchi city's city lord alone. Since her attitude is bad, there's nothing we can do about it. We can only endure it. Qin Yu thought of a matter. For the #1 artifact crafting expert like the craftsman god, Cheho Yuan, even if he was arrogant toward the various major powers would still have to endure it. Wasn't this the same principle? At the moment when Qin Yu and his brothers were chatting, Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others went to check out the available vacant houses using the jade slips. After a lively discussion, Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others finally decided. Xing Yuan walked toward the yellow-clothed woman and said with a smile, "We have already decided. It is the house number 8793043 in the Yuchi city's North District. There are only 13 houses left in the North District. This house is the best among them. You all truly have good eyesight." That yellow-clothed woman lightly smiled and said, "You can pay the fee now. The total is 28 million low-quality divine spiritual stones." Xing Yuan and Ziyun glanced at each other. With smiles on their faces, they took out 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones. That yellow-clothed woman received the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones and nodded her head. Then she flipped her hand and took out a hexagonal key. At the same time she also took out a jade slip. However, right at this moment, "Xiao Yan," a voice rang out, and a man in golden armor walked in. "It's that heavenly deity from earlier," Ho Fei said to Qin Yu via voice transmission. Qin Yu nodded his head. He naturally remembered that heavenly deity from earlier. However, Qin Yu noticed another person. Right after that golden-armored man walked in, a white-clothed youngster walked in from behind him. That youngster is an expert, a heavenly deity-level expert. Qin Yu was able to clearly sense the aura of that white-clothed youngster. After that white-clothed youngster walked in, he walked to the side and picked up a jade slip. He began to check the situation of the houses in Yuchi City. As for the golden-armored man, he walked over to the yellow-clothed woman. "Ah, Legion Commander Lu, what's the matter?" That yellow-clothed woman immediately smiled brilliantly. She completely ignored Xing Yuan and Ziyun. This Legion Commander Lu nodded his head and said, "I remember that there is a house in the Northern District next to the Empty Eagle Pavilion. I want that house. Remember it?" "Yes, Legion Commander Lu." That yellow-clothed woman immediately said. Ziyun quietly said to Xing Yuan, "Big brother Xing Yuan, among the 13 houses in the Northern District, only our house is next to the Empty Eagle Pavilion, right?" Xing Yuan was also startled awake. He hurriedly said to the yellow-clothed woman, "Young lady, we have already purchased that house. We have already given you the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones." "Min." The golden-armored man frowned. "Little Yen, what's going on?" That yellow-clothed woman by the name of Little Yen smiled and said, "It's nothing." As she spoke, the yellow-clothed man looked at Xing Yuan. "This house is taken by Lord Legion Commander. As of now, I did not record it nor did I give you the key. That house is not yours yet." As she spoke, the yellow-clothed woman placed the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones on the table. "You two keep these high-quality divine spiritual stones first and change to another house," the yellow-clothed woman straightforwardly said. Ziyun and Xing Yuan glanced at each other. They then looked at that Lord God of Heaven. They were furious in their hearts. However, what can they do? Fight over a house with a God of Heaven? This God of Heaven? Qin Yu frowned but did not interfere. On the other hand, Qin Yu's gaze suddenly shifted to the white-clothed youth who had been looking at the jade strip. Northern District. I want all the 13 empty houses in the Northern District. The white-clothed youth raised his head and said with a smile, "Silence." Not only Xing Yuan, Ziyun and company, the yellow-clothed woman, Legion Commander Lu and the other people who were looking at the houses all looked at the white-clothed youth. Qin Yu and his two brothers also looked at the white-clothed youth with interest. "You are?" Legion Commander Lu looked to the white-clothed youth with a frown. Only now did he discover that there was actually such a super expert behind him. That white-clothed youth lightly smiled. With a flip of his hand, he took out a golden title plate. "I am Mount Dazzling Gold's large group captain, Huang Jing. I have brought my subordinates to Yuchi City. I might be staying here for a relatively long period of time. These 13 houses are barely enough for us to live in." Mount Dazzling Gold's cultivator. Legion Commander Lu's expression took a huge change. The yellow-clothed woman's expression also took a huge change. Mount Dazzling Gold's large group captain. Legion Commander Lu felt a burst of pressure on his chest. Immediately, he squeezed out a smile and said respectfully, "So it's Senior Huang Jing." Lord City Master had already ordered this junior to receive Senior. Never would I have expected that Senior would arrive so early. This junior has already made arrangements beside the City Master's mansion. No need. It's the Northern District's 13 houses. You merely need to inform Uncle Yuchi. What's wrong? Is there a problem? The white-clothed youth by the name of Huang Jing looked to Legion Commander Lu. No problem. Legion Commander Lu said straightforwardly. Uncle Z, how powerful is this Huang Jing? Does the large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold possess a very high status? Qin Yu asked Zi Futian via Divine Awareness voice transmission. Zi Futian was currently looking at Huang Jing with a fiery gaze. At this moment, he replied via Divine Awareness voice transmission. In the eastern region of the Divine Realm, more than half of the heavenly deities are on Mount Dazzling Gold. There are about 10,000 people. The weakest cultivators on Mount Dazzling Gold are low-level heavenly deities. The cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold possess special privileges to begin with. Yet, this Huang Jing is actually a large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu looked to this quiet white-clothed youth. Exactly how powerful was this white-clothed youth? Qin Yu did not dare to be certain. Chapter 507. The entire Mount Dazzling Gold has around 10,000 people. According to a company consisting of 1,000 people, this Huang Jing is the company captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. He should be one of the higher-ups of Mount Dazzling Gold, Qin Yu thought to himself. Qin Yu didn't know that the highest position in the army of cultivators on Mount Dazzling Gold was the large captain. As for this Yuchi City's Legion commander, he merely possessed the strength of a low-level heavenly deity. It was simply impossible for him to compare with the great captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. Then give me the key. Huang Jing smiled as she looked at the yellow-clothed woman. The yellow-clothed woman immediately flipped her hand and produced 13 keys. Lord Huang Jing, these are the keys to the 13 houses in the Northern District. The yellow-clothed woman's attitude was incomparably respectful. Huang Jing waved her hand and received the 13 keys. Senior Huang Jing. That Legion Commander Lu had a radiant smile on his face. Senior Huang Jing, I wonder how many cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold have you brought with you this time? Will the 13 rooms in the North District be enough? Huang Jing smiled warmly. It should be enough for them to share a room. How can this be? How many people are squeezing together? There's no need to say more. Huang Jing directly interrupted Legion Commander Lu. Return and tell Uncle Yuchi that I have arrived. At the same time, tell Uncle Yuchi that I am not to allow others to disturb me while I am in Yuchi City. Yes. Legion Commander Lu replied respectfully. Huang Jing nodded. With a move of her feet, she disappeared from everyone's sight. In the lobby on the first floor of the sales office, a group of people looked at the place where Huang Jing had disappeared and remained silent for a while. Even if I use the divine spear waning snow, I don't have the slightest chance of winning against this person. Qin Yu was extremely certain in his heart. For this man to be able to become a large captain of Mount Dazzling Gold, is he a mid-level heavenly deity or a high-level heavenly deity? Ho Fei and Kuro were also silent for a while. Legion Commander Lu frowned slightly. Then, he no longer mentioned the matter of buying a house and quickly left the sales office. Mount Dazzling Gold. Xing Yuan was still thinking about this word in his heart. If one day, I can become a cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold. Xing Yuan recalled the disdain of that Lu Qian, as well as the imposing manner of Huang Jing, just now. Xing Yuan looked at Ziyun who was beside him, and his conviction to bitterly cultivate became even more firm. Soon after, Xing Yuan and Ziyun chose a house in the southern district of Yuchi City. This house was a bit cheaper. It only required 1.98 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. After purchasing the house and receiving the key, Qin Yu and his group left. 9 Crane Tower. The 9 Crane Restaurant was a very famous restaurant in Yuchi City. Xing Yuan and Ziyun had just purchased a house and decided to go to the 9 Crane Restaurant to splurge. Qin Yu and his 2 brothers naturally followed along. Qin Yu, his brothers, Xing Yuan and Ziyun's family have a total of 7 people. The 7 of them just happened to fill up a table. Let's be extravagant this time. Ziyun wrinkled her nose and fiercely ordered a few dishes. Most of the dishes in the 9 Crane Restaurant were delicious. Many of the cooking methods originated from different universes, and the ingredients were also very strange. He ordered 16 dishes in one go, and the price reached over 800 low-grade divine spiritual stones. Your mother and I only came here once to spend extravagantly when we got married. Never would I have expected that after so many years, little Yun, you would also have a family. Zi Futian said with a smile. Ziyun smiled happily. She even looked at Xing Yuan. Xing Yuan was also smiling. Brother Xing Yuan, I might leave the Sealfield village in a period of time and will no longer be in Yuchi City. Today I will accompany you and drink for a while. Qin Yu said with a smile. You're leaving? Xing Yuan said in shock. Ho Fei laughed mischievously and said, when I have time in the future, I will still come and see you. He min. Ho Fei only said half of his words when his gaze turned toward the staircase. Qin Yu and the others also followed Ho Fei's gaze and looked toward the staircase. A series of footsteps could be heard. A group of people walked out from the staircase. The person leading them was precisely Huang Jing. The footsteps were unceasing. One after another, over 30 people walked up the staircase. They are all cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu determined in his heart. All of these 30-plus people were heavenly deity-level experts. Because of the arrival of this group of people, the entire restaurant grew quiet for a long time. Even though they did not deliberately reveal their strength, the arrival of 30-plus heavenly deities had already shocked the overwhelming majority of the people in the restaurant. Great Captain, you can sit here. Those heavenly deities quickly sat at 5 tables. As for the white-clothed youngster Huang Jing, when he saw Qin Yu, his eyes shined. We are quite fated. The white-clothed youngster Huang Jing said to Qin Yu with a smile. Those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold couldn't help but look at Qin Yu. Indeed, we are quite fated. Qin Yu lightly nodded. The white-clothed youngster Huang Jing said no more and directly returned to his seat. The people at these 5 tables also ordered some dishes. The arrival of this group of people instead caused Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others to be unable to eat peacefully. Great Captain, how long are we going to stay this time? It's better that we stay a bit shorter and return earlier. While eating, a Mount Dazzling Gold cultivator spoke. A bit shorter. Even if I'm willing, that younger brother of mine might not be, said Huang Jing with a light smile. Huang Jing appeared to be a very gentle and quiet youngster. Even his smile and actions were similar to that of a woman. However, those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold did not dare to be impudent before him. Little young master is too powerful. If we were to go, we would only be trampled upon. Great Captain, you should accompany little young master. After all, he is not a match for you. A female cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold said. Huang Jing shook his head and said, My younger brother is unwilling to fight with me. Otherwise, why would I have brought you all here? But little young master. Fine, I will try my best to shorten the time this time, you guys. Huang Jing shook his head helplessly. All of you quiet down. A clear and cold voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire restaurant, and the voices of everyone in the restaurant abruptly stopped. Huang Jing and the 30-plus cultivators all looked towards the source of the voice. Truly a gutsy person. Ho Fei, Kuro and the others also looked towards the source of the voice excitedly. The person who spoke was a gray-clothed man who was sitting at a table in the corner of the restaurant. The gray-clothed man had stubble and looked slightly dispirited. Just by looking at this gray-clothed man, one's heart would naturally be filled with sadness. An expert. Qin Yu was also unable to be certain. Hey, who are you? Are we disturbing you by talking here? A robust cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold stood up and shouted with a loud voice. Everyone, let's continue chatting. Ignore that madman. That robust man sat down. He did not care about the gray-clothed man in the slightest. Immediately, those 30-plus cultivators continued chatting. As cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, there were not many people in the eastern region of the Divine Realm that dared to forbid them from talking. At the very least, they had met those few major characters before. Huang Jing frowned and took a few glances at that man. Quiet down. That gray-clothed man slightly raised his head and said coldly, This is a restaurant, not your Mount Dazzling Gold. You all are guests. The others are also guests. Don't be too excessive. The 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold were all angered. However, Huang Jing stood up. You know that we are from Mount Dazzling Gold. Judging by your strength, you are also a mid-level heavenly deity. However, you are not from Mount Dazzling Gold. In that case, which of the 64 cities are you from? That gray-clothed man continued to drink. He completely ignored Huang Jing. Qin Yu had been watching everything the entire time. Big brother. Ho Fei's voice sounded in Qin Yu's mind. Qin Yu looked to Ho Fei. Ho Fei's complexion was a bit pale. He said via voice transmission, Big brother, I keep having this feeling that gray-clothed man is looking at me. Qin Yu turned around to look at the gray-clothed man. The gray-clothed man was currently drinking with his head lowered. But he's not looking at you. Qin Yu frowned. Ho Fei's complexion grew even paler. No, I am able to sense that he is looking at me. Furthermore, he is using his aura to oppress me. As he said that, beads of sweat appeared on Ho Fei's forehead. Aura. Qin Yu was unable to sense any aura in the surroundings at all. He couldn't help but look to Ho Fei in confusion. He then looked to the gray-clothed man. Huang Jing stood there and looked to the gray-clothed man. She was frowning. As for those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, they were quietly waiting for Huang Jing to give the order. Because of this, the entire restaurant had grown quiet. Huff, the wine is pretty good. The gray-clothed man raised his head and finished drinking. He then stood up and cast his gaze toward Huang Jing and them. He sighed and shook his head. Fuck, a mere mid-level heavenly deity dares to be this arrogant. That loud-voiced man suddenly rushed out and directly charged toward the gray-clothed man. Huang Jing did not stop him. That was because she also felt that it was strange. Qin Yu and them immediately retreated to a corner. Chi. With the body of this loud-voiced man as the center, countless rays of golden light shot out. Like Buddhist threads, the golden light actually formed an enormous cocoon. The entire cocoon had also wrapped around the gray-clothed man. Qin Yu and them were unable to see what was happening within the golden cocoon at all. Bang! The golden cocoon suddenly shattered, and the man with the loud voice spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying back. As for the gray-clothed man, he was still standing there. It was as if he had not attacked at all. Little girl, did you know that I hate noise the most? The gray-clothed man cast his gaze toward Huang Jing. Little girl. Qin Yu also looked to Huang Jing in surprise. Even though Huang Jing was gentle and quiet, his voice was still a man's voice. You! Huang Jing opened her eyes wide. She had an expression of disbelief. Today I have also come here for an important matter. Originally my mood was very good. However, I was unable to drink my wine in peace. Thus I thought that I should punish you all. The gray-clothed man lightly smiled. Only the buzzing sound of the air vibrating could be heard. Stillness. Regardless of whether it was Huang Jing, the seriously injured loud-voiced man, or the other cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, all of them were completely motionless. These 30-plus people were completely motionless, as if they were frozen in ice. That loud-voiced man's mouth was still open. However, no matter what, he was unable to close his mouth. The 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold were all shocked. Huang Jing, a genius of Mount Dazzling Gold. Her strength had reached the high-level heavenly deity level. A super expert like her actually did not even have the chance to resist when faced with this gray-clothed man. Crack chi. The sound of glass shattering sounded. Cracks actually appeared in the space surrounding Huang Jing. Black spatial cracks. Dazzling golden light circulated through Huang Jing's body. The number of black spatial cracks grew more and more numerous. At the same time, the width of the spatial cracks also grew larger and larger. Little girl, you have some strength and perseverance. The gray-clothed man lightly nodded. However, do not resist anymore. Right after he finished saying those words, all of the spatial cracks disappeared. Huang Jing returned to her original stillness. Everything was useless. Huang Jing looked to the gray-clothed man with a pleading gaze. Evidently, Huang Jing also knew that she had kicked an iron plate. And I'm in a good mood today. I'll spare you all. The gray-clothed man lightly smiled. Immediately, the bodies of Huang Jing and the other 30-plus cultivators trembled. Everyone regained their ability to move. However, everyone's gazes towards the gray-clothed man were filled with shock. This junior was disrespectful this time. Thank you, senior, for your magnanimity. Let's go. Huang Jing's voice was actually very clear and sweet. Clearly, it was a woman's voice. The 30-plus cultivators did not dare to speak any nonsense. They immediately followed Huang Jing and quickly left the restaurant. At this moment, other than Qin Yu and his brothers, the rest of the people in the restaurant had all disappeared. Even Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the rest had fled downstairs. Qin Yu felt extremely helpless. Why is that gray-clothed man blocking us? It wasn't that Qin Yu and the rest did not want to escape. Earlier, they saw that the gray-clothed man had caused Huang Jing and the rest to be in a state of stillness. Qin Yu and the rest felt that something was amiss. Everyone ran downstairs. Ziyun and the rest ran downstairs. However, Qin Yu and his brothers were unable to go downstairs. It was as if something was blocking them. You three little fellows, don't be anxious. The gray-clothed man smiled as he looked at Qin Yu and his brothers. The reason I've come this time is to find you three. May I know why Senior is looking for us three brothers? Qin Yu bowed and said. You all came from the immortal devil and demon realm, right? The gray-clothed man said with a smile. Precisely. Qin Yu replied. The gray-clothed man lightly nodded. I don't know if you all still remember. The immortal devil and demon realm's ape and monkey clans inherited Holy Land had a saying. Anyone who managed to master the heaven-startling single-stick strike before ascending to the divine realm would be my disciple. Qin Yu and Hou Fei glanced at each other. They were shocked as they looked at the gray-clothed man in front of them. You are the senior that left behind the inherited Holy Land," Hou Fei said with a stammer. "That's right. Hou Fei, I already know about everything that happened in the immortal devil and demon realm. You are a disciple of my ape and monkey clan. Furthermore, you have also mastered the heaven-startling single-stick strike. I will naturally keep my promise. From today on, you are my disciple. Prepare yourself and follow me immediately," the gray-clothed man said indifferently. Qin Yu and his brothers were all confused. Take in a disciple. Follow this gray-clothed man. "But I already have a master," Hou Fei hurriedly said. "You have a master? How come I don't know who your master is?" the gray-clothed man said with a frown. "It's Uncle Lon. Oh, Jiang Lon. My master is called Jiang Lon," Hou Fei hurriedly said. Chapter 508. Jiang Lon. The gray-clothed man slightly frowned and muttered a couple times. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. They then continued to look at this mysterious gray-clothed man. This gray-clothed man's strength had completely shocked them. Before this gray-clothed man, it was simply impossible for them to escape. "You are Jiang Lan's disciple." The gray-clothed man frowned as he looked to Hou Fei. "You cannot lie." Upon hearing this, Hou Fei heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. It would appear that his master's great name was still very useful. "That's right. My master is Jiang Lan. I already have a master. Thus I cannot take another master. You also cannot bring me away," Hou Fei said repeatedly. Hou Fei did not wish to be separated from his brothers. Qin Yu and Kuro could only remain silent. "Ha, little monkey, don't try to be crafty. Regardless of whether you are Jiang Lan's disciple or not, I will still bring you away. Even if you are his disciple, you do not even know the slightest bit of his abilities. What sort of master and disciple is this? I will help Jiang Lan discipline you. I believe that he will also not say anything." The gray-clothed man revealed a smile. Hou Fei's expression immediately turned bitter. Hou Fei indeed did not know the slightest bit of Uncle Lan's abilities. At this moment, Qin Yu grew anxious. He immediately said, "Senior, Hou Fei is my brother. The three of us have ascended to the divine realm together. Senior, could it be that you must separate us three brothers?" The gray-clothed man smiled. "There is no such thing as perfection in this world. Ever since this Hou Fei mastered the heaven-startling single-stick strike, he has become my master and disciple. Well then, when this little monkey succeeds in his training, I will have him come back to see you." As he said that, the gray-clothed man waved his hand. Hou Fei's body was fixed in place. Hou Fei's eyes were rolling around. He was glaring angrily at the gray-clothed man. However, no matter what, Hou Fei was unable to say a single word. He could only use his eyes to resist. What a fierce temperament. I like it. The gray-robed man smiled and walked towards the window of the restaurant. Hou Fei's body involuntarily floated behind the gray-clothed man. Qin Yu and Kuro wanted to give chase, but there seemed to be a transparent barrier in front of them. "Senior, if we want to find Hou Fei, where can we find him?" Qin Yu quickly asked. At this moment, the gray-clothed man had already flown out of the window. Hou Fei also followed behind the gray-clothed man and involuntarily flew up. The gray-clothed man turned around and smiled. "If you want to find Hou Fei, go to the Azure Sea." After saying that, the gray-robed man's body turned into a stream of light and flew straight into the sky. Hou Fei followed behind him. The two spots of light reached the horizon and then disappeared. Azure Sea, Qin Yu muttered. Kuro said aloud, "Big brother, the invisible obstacles around us have completely disappeared. Big brother, don't think too much. The gray-clothed man is much stronger than us. If he wants to kill us, he can kill us with a thought. Moreover, he is so familiar with the forbidden inheritance area of the ape and monkey clan. He should be an ancestor of the ape and monkey clan. He definitely won't hurt the monkeys. Qin Yu also nodded. How could Qin Yu not understand this point? More than 30 divine realm experts couldn't even move in front of the gray-clothed man. How could such a person deceive them with such strength? Judging from the man's tone, he obviously knows Uncle Lon. Qin Yu sighed regretfully. I was so focused on Fei that I forgot to ask the senior if he knows where Uncle Lon is. Big brother, don't think too much. Let's leave the restaurant first. Kuro immediately followed Qin Yu out of the restaurant. Just as they walked down the stairs to the street outside, Qin Yu and Kuro saw Xing Yuan, Ziyun and Ziyun's parents waiting for them on the street. Qin Yu, what happened just now? Where's Ho Fei? Did anything happen to him? Xing Yuan anxiously asked. Xing Yuan was at the front of the restaurant. Earlier, the gray-clothed man and Ho Fei flew out of the back window. Xing Yuan didn't see the gray-clothed man and Ho Fei flying away. Qin Yu comforted. It's nothing. That's one of Ho Fei's seniors. He's looking for him for an important matter. Then I'm relieved. Xing Yuan smiled in shame. Qin Yu, earlier when we went downstairs, we discovered that you two had not come down. Thus we were worried that something might have happened to you two. Merely that person's strength was too strong. Thus we did not dare to go upstairs. I hope that you don't mind. Qin Yu smiled carelessly. This cannot be blamed on you. Brother Xing Yuan, there's one thing that I must tell you. Kuro and I will not be returning to the Sealfield village. In the future you also do not have to go and find us. If there's anything, we will come and find you. I know the address of your new home. Not returning. You're going to buy a house? Xing Yuan asked in confusion. Kuro, who stood beside Qin Yu, said, No, we're going outside the city. Occupying a mountain and declaring yourself king. Xing Yuan guessed with a low voice. Qin Yu shook his head and said with a smile. Not occupying a mountain and declaring myself king. I merely want to find a quiet place to train. Originally, I had only entered the Sealfield village for the sake of familiarizing myself with the general situation of the divine realm. As of now, Qin Yu could be said to have a complete understanding of the matters within the sphere of influence of the Yuchi city. Oh, in that case, when the two of you train outside, be careful not to be discovered by bandits. Xing Yuan advised. Qin Yu and Kuro lightly smiled. In the Zhonglan's realm, how could those bandits discover them? After bidding farewell to Xing Yuan and his family, Qin Yu and Kuro left the Yuchi city's eastern city gate and proceeded eastward along the official road. After going east for 1,000 miles, the official road split into several forks. As for Qin Yu and Kuro, they proceeded onward along one of the forks. After proceeding halfway and seeing that there was no one around, Qin Yu and Kuro disappeared from the road. In the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, Uncle Fu. Qin Yu directly called for Uncle Fu. Master, what's the matter? Said Uncle Fu as he slightly bowed. Qin Yu asked, Uncle Fu, I've been in the divine realm for so long. Although I know of the 8 great sage emperors, I do not know of the other god kings. Today I encountered an expert. He should be a god king. He came from the Azura Sea. Can you tell me where the Azura Sea is? Azura Sea, said Uncle Fu in surprise. Kuro stood beside Qin Yu and quietly listened. Uncle Fu, you know about the Azura Sea? Qin Yu was secretly delighted. Uncle Fu, it's best that you quickly tell me what you know. Uncle Fu said helplessly. Master, the old master had once instructed me that when the new master's strength is weak, it's best that we do not go and provoke the major powers. It's best that we do not even know about them. Qin Yu shook his head and smiled. Cheho Yuan was truly considerate. However, since master has asked, I'll tell you. Uncle Fu said respectfully. The entire divine realm is mainly divided into 2 camps. One is the native forces of the divine realm and the other is the ascenders of the lower realm. Oh! Qin Yu's eyes lit up. The native forces of the divine realm are the natives of the divine realm. Uncle Fu nodded. The 8 most deeply rooted forces of the divine realm are the 8 great sage emperors. They are the native forces of the divine realm. They have been in existence since the day the divine realm was born. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Other than these 8 forces, over the countless years, more and more ascenders gathered in the lower realm. There were also some heroic figures that appeared. In the end, 3 forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm were born. Uncle Fu said slowly. These 3 forces are the Azura Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. Azura Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. Qin Yu couldn't help but engrave these 3 words in his mind. Uncle Fu continued. Back then, the old master had also evaluated that the Azura Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island, these 3 forces were comparable to one of the 8 great sage emperors. Qin Yu completely understood. Up until now, the forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm were still much weaker. There were only 3 forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm while there were 8 native forces. Obviously, they weren't on the same level. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. The 8 great sage emperors are deeply rooted and have been passed down for 120 trillion years. It's already very impressive that these 3 forces could develop to the same level as them. However, the Azura Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. The old master had once said that the Azura Sea was the strongest among the 3 forces. Uncle Fu said solemnly. Qin Yu couldn't help but be surprised. Master, do you still remember the simplified map of the divine realm? Uncle Fu smiled. Qin Yu nodded. The divine realm is mainly a huge piece of land. In the center of this land there is an inland sea. And in the periphery of this land, there is a boundless ocean. Speaking of this, a scene appeared in Qin Yu's mind. A round cake floats on a river. In the middle of the round cake there is a hole. The round cake is the land of the divine realm. The hole is the inland sea, and the river floating on the round cake is the boundless ocean. Yes, the inland sea has another name. It is called the Azura Sea. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu was shocked. The inland sea is the Azura Sea. Qin Yu didn't expect the Azura Sea to be the inland sea. He thought it was a large lake. The inland sea of the divine realm was very big. Just the surface area alone was about 1/8 of the land of the divine realm. The 8 great sage emperors of the divine realm are located in the east, south, west, north, southeast, southwest, northwest and northeast regions. And in the center is the Azura Sea. As for Mount Blood Demon, it is located between the North Pole Sage Emperor and the Northwest Sage Emperor. And the last one, Dual Domain Island, is located on an island in the boundless ocean outside the land of the divine realm. Uncle Fu said the geographical locations of the 11 major forces of the divine realm in one breath. Qin Yu's mind clearly pictured the various major forces. Thinking of what Uncle Fu said, the Azura Sea was actually the strongest of the 3 major forces. He calmed down a little. Someone actually dared to occupy the inland sea in the center of the divine realm and named it the Azura Sea. Seems like the Azura Sea is very powerful. Faye should be able to benefit from being there. Chapter 509. Qin Yu and Kuro continued to stay in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, and did not return to the Sealfield village at all. Originally, Qin Yu had only entered the Sealfield village to familiarize himself with the general environment of the divine realm. However, now that Qin Yu was preparing to undergo a deep level of bitter training, how could he possibly care about anything else? Every day, many people would go missing in the divine realm. This was merely a small matter. In the future, if one wished to return to the life of an ordinary person, one merely needed to spend some divine spiritual stones to pay the Yuchi City's city master's mansion. In the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, there were 5 people sitting together eating and drinking. These 5 people were precisely Qin Yu, Kuro, Uncle Fu, Wu Lan, and an extremely tall and dark-skinned man. Wu Lan, how much longer until your divine tribulation descends? Qin Yu asked with a smile on his face. My divine tribulation? I'm not sure. Even now I have not sensed it, said Wu Lan helplessly. Although he had not followed Qin Yu to the divine realm for a long time, he had stayed in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm the entire time. In reality, it could be said that he had already spent over 100,000 years in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm. Being unable to sense the divine tribulation even after being a level 9 demon emperor for over 100,000 years, Wu Lan felt extremely helpless. Brother Wu Lan, do not worry. When the time comes, I, Old Wu, will accompany you to undergo the divine tribulation. That tall and dark-skinned man laughed loudly and said, Master's Jianglan's realm is still the best. It's like another world. In here I do not have the slightest restriction. I can actually take a human form. This is truly delightful. Wu Lan lightly smiled and said, The divine realm's demonic beasts are restricted in the divine realm. Before passing the divine tribulation, they are unable to take a human form. However, the divine realm's demonic beasts are all able to take a human form in the lower realms. It is the same in the Jianglan's realm. Qin Yu understood this very well. Back then he had saved over 80 pets. When they were in the pet cage, they were still in their original forms. However, when they were released, they were all able to take a human form. If I were to appear in the divine realm now, I would have to take the form of a black stain ant. Wu shook his head helplessly. This was also the reason why he had not left the Jianglan's realm for so many years. The underground's cave's dragon was unable to take a human form in the divine realm. In the divine realm, the underground's dragon was restricted and was unable to take a human form. In the realm, the underground was restricted to take a human form. To was his was. After eating and drinking, Wu He, Wu Lan, the two of you should cultivate in peace. Xiao He and I also need to cultivate, said Qin Yu. Yes, said Wu He and Wu Lan respectfully. After that, the two of them left side by side. Wu He and Wu Lan had a very good relationship. Among the monstrous beasts of the divine realm, the subterranean cave dragon and the black blur ant were both emperors among the monstrous beasts. The subterranean cave dragon had an advantage in individual combat strength. On the other hand, the black blur ant had the advantage of being able to control an ant tide that covered the sky. Compared to the subterranean cave dragon, the people of the heavenly realm were more afraid of the ant tide. Seeing the two of them leave, Qin Yu said to Kuro, Xiao He, since Fei has left, there is no one to spar with you. Follow Uncle Fu to the Bewitching God Temple and look at the cultivation method books left behind in the Bewitching God Temple. There are many books that describe fighting methods in the Bewitching God Temple. They might be beneficial to you. I don't have an opponent. No, there is one. Kuro shook his head with a faint smile. Qin Yu looked to Qin Yu in surprise. There are not many people in the Jianglan's realm. Who could be your opponent? Uncle Fu. Kuro turned around and looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu's speed is even faster than heavenly deities. His attacks are also extremely sharp. Sparring with him would definitely be of great help to me. As for Uncle Fu, he looked to Qin Yu. Qin Yu naturally knew of Uncle Fu's strength. Uncle Fu's speed was extremely fast and his attacks were extremely straightforward. With the current Kuro's strength, he was simply no match for Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, what do you think? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu smiled and said, I do not have much comprehension toward the spatial laws. However, my old master had once taught me a set of fighting methods that relied purely on speed and power. I think that it would be sufficient for me to spar with His Highness Kuro. I will also act appropriately. That's good. Qin Yu pondered for a moment and then agreed. Xiao He, if you feel lonely and bored, then go and trample on Wu He, Wu Lan and them. Trample on them. Kuro's grave and stern face also displayed a smile. Kuro, who had reached the mid-level deity level and had completely refined the Grand Mist spiritual treasure Snowthread gloves, possessed an attack power that was much greater than before. Last time when he fought against Wu He in the divine spiritual stone mine, Kuro was only a low-level deity. Relying on his cloud-piercing spear and Grand Mist spiritual treasure, he was able to injure Wu He. And now, Kuro, whose strength had increased by 10 times, was able to pierce through Wu He with a single spear strike. "If it's all right, I will go and trample on them," Kuro said with a trace of a joking smile. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. In the following days, Qin Yu began to peacefully cultivate in his room. He wholeheartedly immersed himself in the deductions of the array path. Killing array, trapping array, defensive array. All of the various array paths were divided into many different categories. Every single category had its own branch categories. Unceasingly deducing, it was as if 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 4, 4 gave birth to 8. Just like that, the deductions were endless. Qin Yu's deduction speed was extremely fast. One array path after another automatically appeared in his mind. At the same time, the symbols of the array paths of various attributes were also changing. In an instant, tens of millions of talismans disappeared and appeared. And from the outside, Qin Yu appeared to be sitting there cross-legged the entire time. Delightful, delightful. Qin Yu abruptly opened his eyes. His face was filled with smiles. Just earlier, Qin Yu had finally succeeded in deducing a complicated trapping array that he had deduced for an entire 3,000 years. This feeling of unceasing research, unceasing effort, and finally succeeding made Qin Yu feel a sense of conquest. It was as if he was conquering one peak after another. At the same time, Qin Yu also felt Uncle Fu's strength in the array path. Back then, when Uncle Fu had set up the killing array for him to see, he was only barely able to see through it after reaching his current level of strength. As for the true principles behind it, he was completely clueless. Every time he conquered a difficult problem, Qin Yu would take a short break. Is it right for me to wholeheartedly immerse myself in researching the array path? Qin Yu suddenly frowned. He began to doubt himself. After coming to the divine realm for so many years, Qin Yu had practically spent all of his energy on the array path. If I want to straighten my back in Li Er's family, there are only 2 ways for me to do so. The first is to reach the divine king realm. The second is to become a character like the craftsman god. Qin Yu was very clear about his own advantages. His advantages were the tears of Lu Xing, left behind by Zhuochome, the bewitching god temple left behind by the craftsman god, Cheho Yuan, and the large amount of array path scrolls. There were also some experiences left behind by Cheho Yuan. If he were to comprehend the spatial comprehension left behind by Zhuochome, how long would it take for him to reach the divine king realm? Qin Yu pondered for a long time. The answer was, he didn't know how many years it would take. That was because last time, Qin Yu had spent 3,000 years to reach the peak of the mid-level deity level from the initial Jindan. According to Qin Yu's estimation, he reckoned that he would be able to reach the peak of the high-level deity level after spending 10,000 years to comprehend the spatial comprehension. However, to reach the heavenly deity level from the deity level was a threshold. Qin Yu reckoned that it would take him several tens of thousands of years to reach the threshold. As for the low-level heavenly deity, mid-level heavenly deity and high-level heavenly deity levels, each one more difficult than the last, the amount of time required to reach the high-level heavenly deity level would definitely be 10 times longer than the last. Qin Yu believed that it would take him at least 10 million years to reach the high-level heavenly deity level. That would be the most fortunate situation. In the history of the divine realm, was there anyone that reached the high-level heavenly deity level in merely 10 million years? In the divine realm, all of the high-level heavenly deities were people that could call the wind and summon the rain. All of them had to go through all kinds of difficulties and painstakingly train for a very long time to reach the high-level heavenly deity level. However, this was still not the most difficult. The most difficult was reaching the God King level from the high-level heavenly deity level. The number of god kings in the divine realm was extremely small. The 8 great sage emperors were all god king experts. As for the 8 great sage emperors, they were people that had existed for countless hundreds of millions of years. Would one be able to reach the god king level merely by relying on the comprehension left behind by Lu Xing's tear? Qin Yu did not believe that to be the case. If it was that easy to reach the god king level, then there wouldn't be so few god king experts in the divine realm. From Qin Yu's point of view, even if one possessed the comprehension left behind by Zhuo Qiumei, without sufficient time, sufficient experience and that trace of luck, it would be very difficult for one to reach the god king level from the high-level heavenly deity level. Qin Yu was unable to determine how long it would take to reach the god king level. Thus, the first path was impossible. The second path, to become the #1 artifact crafting expert comparable to the craftsman god. Qin Yu possessed sufficient confidence in himself. There were several important points to becoming an artifact crafting expert. First, someone must be able to teach you how to craft artifacts. Crafting was a skill. If there was no one to teach you how to craft artifacts, then it would be impossible for you to succeed. Qin Yu possessed a large amount of books left behind by the craftsman god, as well as Uncle Fu, who had followed the craftsman god for countless years. Thus, learning how to craft artifacts was naturally easy. As for the other people in the divine realm, only a small number of them were able to find an artifact crafting expert to teach them. Second, having sufficient materials to craft and experiment with. Crafting artifacts was the same as other things. Practice makes perfect. Even if one were to be very powerful in theory, one would still need to experiment with ordinary divine artifacts step by step and accumulate experience in order to become an artifact crafting expert. Similarly, experimentation would require a large amount of materials. Without sufficient wealth, would one dare to use materials like that? Qin Yu dared to do so because he possessed a large amount of wealth left behind by the craftsman god. Third, controlling fire. In other words, the level of one's divine sense. As he possessed Lu Xing's tear, the current Qin Yu's divine sense was comparable to that of a low-level heavenly deity. How many heavenly deities were there in the divine realm? To have even heavenly deities craft artifacts. Fourth, the level of flames within one's body. In order to melt some materials, one would need flames. Qin Yu was currently at the late stage of the origin stage. His flames were still the black divine flames. However, he needed to take a step forward. The true flames within Qin Yu's body were the white pure flames. Furthermore, Qin Yu also possessed the refining flame wristband. Likely, no one would be able to match the amount of flames he possessed. Fifth, and also the final point, the comprehension of the array path. Qin Yu had spent close to 90,000 years to comprehend the first stage of the array path. Although this was the first stage of the array path that had gone astray, the fastest person in the history of the divine realm to comprehend the first stage of the array path had also spent 100,000 years. As for Che Ho Yuan, he had spent 1,000,000 years to comprehend the first stage. There was no need to mention Qin Yu's talent in the array path. On top of that, he also had Che Ho Yuan's experience and advice. This allowed Qin Yu to not take the wrong path. As his talent was better than Che Ho Yuan's, he would not take the wrong path. On top of that, all the other conditions were close to perfection. If Qin Yu was unable to become another craftsman god, then it could only be said that the heavens wanted him dead. Qin Yu was firm in his conviction. He wholeheartedly focused on deducing the array path. As time passed, Qin Yu's comprehension of the array path grew deeper and deeper. At the same time, he felt that the ocean of formations was boundless. 120,000 years. This time around, Qin Yu had spent a total of 120,000 years researching and comprehending the array path. The reason why he stopped was because he had reached a bottleneck. "Uncle Fu!" Qin Yu shouted. Uncle Fu lived in the house next to Qin Yu's. Hearing Qin Yu's shout, Uncle Fu immediately walked over. "Master, what's the matter?" "Uncle Fu, earlier I was researching a trapping array. However, even I am unable to determine the might of this trapping array. I feel that there are many different ways to attack this trapping array. However, I am unable to determine which one it is. What should I do? Qin Yu said somewhat anxiously. Uncle Fu smiled. Master, you have finally reached this stage. When Uncle Fu said this, Qin Yu's heart relaxed. Clearly, Uncle Fu had been waiting for Qin Yu to reach this stage. Master, the deductions of the array path, in your mind, are all empty thoughts. They are all theoretical. Actually, when many facts are revealed, the effects might not be as you think. In the past, you might be more certain of the effects of the formation. However, as the formation becomes more and more complex, Master's consciousness is unable to determine it. At this time, you need to experiment. Uncle Fu smiled at Qin Yu. Master, do you still remember when you asked me for low-grade God Spirit Stones? I took out so many low-grade God Spirit Stones and all sorts of crystals from my storage ring. I remember. How could Qin Yu forget that scene? Uncle Fu nodded. The formation that I deduced myself, even now, I am unable to determine its might. This is because it has reached an extreme level of complexity. Therefore, I use some low-grade God Spirit Stones to set up the formation and conduct experiments. You are saying that I should conduct experiments on the formation. Then how should I conduct experiments? Qin Yu began to ponder in his heart. Kuro, Wulan, Wuhi. Let them experience the formation. Well, some formation arrays were too powerful. What if the three of them were to be seriously injured and lose their lives? Furthermore, he could not waste other people's time. After all, Xiao Hei and them also needed to train. Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu did not possess a soul. Some of the soul-based attacks were completely ineffective. He was also unable to test the might of the formation arrays. Personally experience the might of the formation arrays. That would not do either. Although he was able to remain unharmed in the Zhonglan's realm, if he were to use the Zhonglan's realm spatial energy to cancel out the attacks, then how would he be able to test the might of the formation arrays? Master, this is very simple. Learn from old Master. Casually find a place where bandits are gathered and set up a formation array there. Then use those bandits as your experiment. Uncle Fu suggested. Qin Yu's eyes shined. Good, let's choose. Qin Yu smiled and said. The edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory. Suddenly, Qin Yu's body trembled. A burst of aura began to spread out from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu was slightly startled. Soon after, his eyes were filled with ecstasy. After 120,000 years, this stellar space has finally completed its evolution. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.